I'm a little rusty on it.
I'll hum it for you.
is amazing. All right. How is everyone doing? Sorry. It's been like really warm here in Denver lately. You know, with it being that whole summertime thing, but good God, man. Oh, yeah, this is like a little AC box. So, all right, let's do the intro. Oh my God, I'm like dying of heat. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you might be watching this. My name is Josh, and welcome to my channel. On here, we talk news, politics, and current events. So SCOTUS has come out with some new decisions. Should be kind of fun. The WHO, it might be, looks like they're revving up soon to be releasing a report on Diet Coke, which besides, the whole, like, it being Diet Coke, a lot of people drink Diet Coke, it's not really the angle I'm not interested in. Mainly, this is an example of why we need robust regulation and robust research into the things that corporations put in our food that you're consuming every day that you probably don't even know about, or at least we don't know the effects of until much later. After that, that should probably take up the first hour, most likely, and then I want to get into, when we bop into the fun half, I want to take a look at the SHEIN story. I saw this kind of making the rounds. It was like kind of interesting, but like the more I looked into it, the more I guess just the more interesting it got. Fast fashion and everything else in between, and then we'll just take a look at some right wingers. And I want to look at the one that I was like added probably last minute was we'll kind of click around, but I want to watch the debate that one Detsiny had with Kristen Hawkins, a conservative pro-lifer, anti-choicer that we've watched before here on the program. But I kind of want to see some of their back and forth. I don't think, like, we can't get to all of it. The entire video is 4 hours. But certainly we can kind of click around and kind of see what all, see some of the more interesting exchanges and kind of, I don't talk or really do or interact, I guess, with Detsiny that often on here. It's not really somebody, I'm aware of him. I've watched some of his stuff, but not somebody I'm deeply experienced with. But either way, that's gonna be the show. I need some water already. Yeah, you can really okay, you guys can't see it, but like my fucking cup is like sweating, like. And some might say, Josh, turn on the AC in your home. We have it on, but it doesn't really, it's out there in like a window or in a portion of the wall, so it does not make it back here. So when I close this door, I am locking myself into whatever heat is back here. And we just had a rainstorm too, so it's a bit humid as well. I thought I got away from all that when I moved from the east. But enough of my bitching. Let's get on with it. The Supreme Court. Oh, Wally. All right. Supreme Court guts affirmative action effectively ending race conscious admissions. So let me get like kind of ahead. Let me like start really quickly with my take on this. I don't think this is a positive change. I don't think we're going to see. Okay, so if I'm here, is it aiming at me? It's really hard to always tell when these. Okay. Like if this wasn't okay, cool. So that's okay, cool. I'm of the general opinion that this will be a decision that will affect negatively the diverse admission process, or the like what we see right now in college admissions is an effort to diversify who gets to go to college, right? And I don't think with the affirmative action repeal, I don't think we are going to see a continuation of that process. I think what we will end up seeing in the long run is the percentage of either, like, well, quite frankly, non-white people and non-white people, sorry, there's like a bug, non-white people entering into college. And we're also going to see, I think, a reduction in what I think is kind of that middle of the road, maybe not even the middle of the road, but like those people that aren't like star classmates, that aren't the best of the best of the best of their community, won't now be making it into college. So if you're like, if you go to a school in like the hood and there's 6 people, who want to go to college, 6 people who make it into the college application process, I think that we're going to see a reduced number of people actually get accepted, as opposed to maybe all 6 or maybe 5 out of 6. I think we might be looking at a situation where, maybe colleges take the top 1, maybe top 2. But this is going to allow colleges at the end of the day to, I think, be a little bit more picky with their choices, because when people can point, because there's not going to be a way for them to point, for people to point out, hey, you're not taking this many black people. Colleges now have the ability to go, well, we can't tell who is and who isn't. So it just so happens that we don't. And that's how it was before affirmative action. That's how it was for a very long time, that, you'd apply to college and sure, your grades are good, but maybe you have a black name. Maybe, maybe you were like 3rd best in your entire class, but the only black person in the entire group. But college admissions only takes the top 2. So now where do you go? You go to a different school. So it's just, maybe not even the same kind level of schooling. At the end of the day, access to further education, I think, should already, if you're asking me what it should be something that we fund socially. But all of that aside, let's get into the actual Supreme Court decision. And a few of the reactions. Specifically, we'll take a look at Thomas and Brown Jackson's opinions. So, the U.S. Supreme Court has found that Harvard and the University of North Carolina's admission policy violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The decision reverses decades of precedent upheld over the years by narrow court majorities that included Republican-appointed justices. It could end the ability of colleges and universities, public and private. So keep in mind, University of North Carolina, a public school, Harvard, a public school, a private school that does receive public funding. To do what most say they will need to do. Consider race as one of the many factors in deciding which of the qualified applicants is to be admitted. So keep in mind also, affirmative action as a tool, in terms of what's the word? In terms of kind of a way of determining who to hire, stuff like that. What affirmative action did was combat the very shrouded and I think easily obscured racism that we have in not only our had in our college admission processes and in our hiring processes. To put it plainly, studies have been done that when 2 people submit a resume with the exact same criteria, but one of them has a blacker sounding name and one of them has a more white sounding name, studies have found that the white applicant will end up getting a callback, whereas the black applicant will not. This is a result of kind of a normalization, or I guess a comfort around white identity in our society. Mainly because a lot of our laws, a lot of our understanding of society, a lot of the ways that we conceptualize, I think, people are through not necessarily not that I think anybody's doing this consciously, but certainly through when you think of the American citizen, do you think of a black guy? You kind of should. Black people are as American as everybody else. But when you think of Captain America, what do you vision, right? And, that's part of kind of societal, I think, mythology. And unfortunately, that has ramifications on actual people's actual lives, whether it be getting into college, whether it be getting a job. But affirmative action, what that did was kind of lift the veil on a lot of that and go, okay, you need You need to start hiring black people and people of color a lot more than you are right now. Because if left up to their own decisions, colleges and businesses are going to kind of do like the, well, I mean, I read the last name Jackson, and then I read the last name, I don't know, Wilson. I don't know. I can't think of like Williamson. We'll go with. How about that? And I didn't really think about race at all. I just hired the Williamson one. I just kind of flipped a coin, and it just so happened that the person with the last name Jackson ended up being the black person. Now that person, that individual, wasn't being racist. But again, we're not looking at this from like an individual standpoint. The consequences are individual. The system, the structure, the like mindset is like a structural one. It's a larger, more ubiquitous one. So affirmative action was a direct tool to go, hey, you need to make an effort to hire black people. We can't live in this country where black people just don't get hired because every time we flip a coin, it ends up being the white guy who gets the job. Like that's just not workable. We can't, like, it's not a system, and it's not a structure that we can continue to tolerate. And now the Supreme Court and the people arguing this case have decided that the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment instead now is going to now basically say, no, you don't have to do that. Now you can go back to the, hey, look, I just flipped a coin on these two names, and we'll kind of see what happens. My prediction is that less black people are going to get into colleges. Well, I don't know if this doesn't have implications on in terms of jobs and hiring, but certainly in colleges. We will look at this 1 to 2 to 3, maybe 4 years down the road, and we'll see what the college admission rate is for black people. If it plummets, we know why it plummeted, and if it drops, we also know that. But if it stays the same, then then I will come back on here and say, hey, look, we clearly solved the racist structure that we had for college admission, for the college admission process. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. And unfortunately, for us to learn that lesson, for us to make this change, walk back something like affirmative action, there are going to be, what, thousands? I don't know about millions, but certainly thousands who now, for us to find out if this is damaging, we are going to leave black people, or just in general, people of color, non-white folks, we are going to leave them behind in terms of college education, in terms of college admissions. So, for us to find out, a group has to get hurt by that, and I can almost guarantee you, it's going to be the black college admission rate. I can almost guarantee you. The decision reverses decades of precedent. Okay, right. Chief Justice John Roberts, a longtime critic of racial references of any kind. By the way, also, it's kind of silly, the idea that, like, we live in a colorblind world when, quite frankly, we don't. There is almost no structure that you can build created by people that isn't going to be colorblind in some form or fashion. A longtime critic of racial preferences of any kind wrote the court's majority decision saying that the nation's colleges and universities must use colorblind criteria in admissions. See, this is what I mean. Colorblind means, hey, you don't have to admit the black people to your college. We're not going to force you to have some percentage of black people in your college, which means they're going to flip a coin. And how many times do you think it's going to land on the white sounding name? That's what this is going to come down to, unfortunately. Quote, the court has permitted race-based college admissions only within the confines of narrow restrictions. Such admissions programs must comply with strict scrutiny, may never use race as a stereotype or negative, and must, at some point, end. The court wrote in its majority opinion. Now, I don't know why that is a thing. Because the idea is like, no, look, guys, also keep in mind, what Roberts is arguing is we've solved racism. And I'm not sure if you've spent any time online, if you've been, maybe like, in the South a little bit, or, maybe in a little bit more conservative leaning areas. Have we solved racism? Are those people anti-racist, or are they just, hey, look, why can't we all get along? But the people they want to get along with are black people trying to live their lives and racists who think they should still be property. That's not really like the same thing as like, you know, us solving racism. That's not really the same thing. The court wrote in its majority opinion, quote, respondents' admissions systems fails each of these criteria and must therefore be invalidated under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Oh, keep in mind also the idea, whoa, hey, stop it. I always forget that button does that. Keep in mind also the whole point of like, what is it where he said, whoa, there we go. Where I scrolled, whoa, man, I scrolled way too far. Wait, what? Huh? Am I crazy? Huh? Wait, did I click a different article? Huh? Oh shit, wait, did the article fucking change? Historic decision across country, individual diet. Wait, whoa. Son of a bitch. What? Don't you love when they do that? God damn, I was in the middle of a fucking sentence. Oh well. No, wait, no, maybe I wasn't. Propound to do what the most safest thing to do. Chief Justice John Roberts. Oh, okay, so now they added like majority opinion. Okay, nah. Okay, whatever. Let's see. Many universities have for too long concluded wrongly that the touchstone of individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice. So also, okay. So I can't go back to the other quote, but I'm sure it'll come up later. So the funny thing about this is most universities, so they'll tell you like, oh, in the past, universities before affirmative action were picking for the challenges bested or the skills built or the lessons learned. But again, the question needs to be asked. If all of that is true, if that is truly the criteria that universities have always decided upon their admissions, then why is it that the college admission rate for blacks was lower? Like, at the end of the day, like, it's never been a colorblind system, and the idea that it is now is ridiculous. We've imposed a system to make sure that there isn't this kind of, blind discrimination, this like learned discrimination, this soft discrimination. But like, we haven't solved it. We haven't solved race relations in this country. And because of that, again, and we'll find out, when less black people get admitted to these colleges, we'll find out the results of this. And at the end of the day, when those communities suffer because once again, they are being held back due to structural racism. I know everyone hates that word, or systemic racism. You know, they get all up in a twist about that one too. Then people will ask, oh, well, why aren't black people succeeding like their counterparts? Why aren't they doing as well as Asians? Even though Asians weren't property for 150 plus years, Asians weren't discriminated against in terms of redlining, keeping them in poor districts, keeping them in less well-funded districts, more specifically less invested districts. So like there's just so many things. We live in such a, we live in this, like, these conservatives live in this world where like everything, everything has always been equal or has been equal long enough. And it's mainly because, I mean, if we're talking Alito, Gorsuch, if we're talking some of the conservatives, for them, it's not about equality. It's that they didn't agree with black people being equal to begin with. So they're fine with. And for Clarence Thomas, he's fine. Guess what? He went to college. He made it to the Supreme Court. He's a corrupt piece of shit. Can't wait till he moves on from the Supreme Court. So, Thomas doesn't care. Thomas, like Samuel L. Jackson in Django Unchained, he's already set. He don't need to give a shit about the rest of the black folk under him. He doesn't have to give a fuck. So he doesn't care about this college admissions bullshit because it's not a concern for him. Any of his kids, grandkids, any of them, doesn't matter. He's Supreme Court justice. They're all going to get into school because they're related to Clarence Thomas. So, but that's what happens when you have connections. Somehow the court was not interested. They're interested in all this race stuff, but somehow they're not interested in something like legacy admissions. If they really have a problem with, if they really think that colleges, do their admissions through, bested challenges and skills built, then why the fuck Are they even remotely interested in in legacy admissions still existing? Like, what challenge? What, you get in because your dad came here? Is that challenge is bested? Is that skills built? No. But that's like the classism. That's the classism of it all. These people are, at the end of the day, deeply classist, as much as they are, some of them, very racist. Let's see. Justice Clarence Thomas took the usual step of reading from the bench parts of his lengthy concurring opinion. Yeah, we know, dude. Thursday's decision, he wrote, sees the university's admissions policies for what they are: rudderless, race-based preferences. Yeah, These policies fly in the face of our colorblind Constitution. Oh, yeah. The Constitution that validated the 3/5 compromise. Right. Totally colorblind. Gotcha. As he has done before, Thomas, the second black justice appointed to the court, reiterated his long-held view that affirmative action imposes a stigma on minorities. While I am painfully aware of the social and economic ravages which have befallen my race and all who suffer discrimination. So keep in mind, he is rejecting the idea that there are objective, reality-based outcomes to systems that bear down on people of his race. This is where it's actually like, it's actively fucking disgusting, because Clarence Thomas understands, and he publicly recognized that he understands that the damage that affirmative action is, like the damage that the reversal of affirmative action will do will be severe in some cases. But to him, it's all about this, we don't want like black people to think like, in a certain way. We don't want them to feel a certain way. The fuck do I care about the idea that there's some kind of shared hive mind between black people? Individual black people are going to apply to college as they will. What I care about is the system that we build, and if that system disenfranchises them or doesn't it. But Clarence Thomas is more interested in this fictional hive mind bullshit about like, oh, the stigma of minorities. I don't give a fuck. Think I care about the stigma of minorities? You think I care that some racist white boy at Harvard makes fun of the black kid because he thinks he got into affirmative action? I don't give a fuck. That guy's racist. He's going to think whatever the thing he is that he's going to think about that black person at Harvard. What I care about is that black kid from whatever neighborhood he's coming from gets to go to Harvard and gets to get a good education and take that back to his community. But for fuck's sake. Hi, Spaggle. How are you? Sorry, you came in when I was like yelling. Whew. Anyway. Christ above. Shit is so fucking stupid. While I am painfully aware of the social and economic ravages which have befallen my race and all who suffer discrimination, I hold our enduring hope that this country will live up to the principles that all men are created equal, or equal citizens, and must be treated equally. Yeah. We get it. We know. You do the... Oh, my God. It's fucking disgusting, dude. Fucking goddamn. Roberts, for his part, pointed to the court's 2003 decision reaffirming the constitutionality of affirmative action programs, noting that Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, writing for the court at the time, had suggested that there would have to be an end at some future point. That time has now come, Roberts said. Yeah, and that's a completely arbitrary line. Oh, why has the time come? Let's take a look. I'm curious. Let's see. From 2000 to 2018, college enrollment rates among 18 to 24-year-olds increased for those who are black from 31 to 37% and Hispanic 22 to 36%. The college enrollment rate in 2018 was also higher than in 2000, and those who were white, 42 versus 39%. Of college applicants are black. Let's take a look. 36%. In 2020, 36% of black physicians were enrolled in college compared to 40% of overall population. So, let's say fall 2010, black students enrolled enrollment has declined from 3.04 million to 2.38, a 22% decrease. Undergraduate, show me this actually. Oh, buddy. Let's see. According to the Census Americans Community Service in 2021, 12% of the total U.S. population identified as Black or African American. African American residents aged 25 or over, 22.6%, had earned a bachelor's degree or higher. This rate is up from 17% in 2010 and falls short of the national rate of 32%. Geez, a 10%, like 10% less compared to the rest of the population. Like, so this is the thing. They'll tell you, oh, guys, we solved racism. It's done. Everyone's equal now. We're all good. But like, nowhere, I guarantee you, nowhere in their decision, the whole part where they said it has to end eventually, have they made any analysis or have they referenced any analysis for why it needs to end or why this is the moment for it to end? Absolutely. Is there a time? Will there be a time one day where affirmative action would not have been useful? Absolutely. I think we'd get there. Do I think that's now? No. And the reason why they want to do the whole like, oh, it needs to end eventually is just because they want to be able to pick when they decide, oh, we have a conservative Supreme Court. Cool. That means it ends right now because we were never for it beginning to begin with. So like the end of the day, like nothing, they pointed to no metric to even show, oh no, Black people, cool, we're good. Black people are going to college at such a consistent rate, the same as everybody else, that we don't need to worry about it anymore. It's good. Like, and like that's also the insulting part. The fact that they don't point to like anything. They're just like, nope, it needs them because it needs them. Opposing view. It feels tragic, said Columbia University President Bollinger, who has for 30 years been a leading proponent of affirmative action programs. It feels like the country has been on a course of choosing between a continuation of the great era of civil rights and another view of, quote, we've done this long enough and we need a whole new approach. It's now the second choice. That sentiment, and also keep in mind, there is no second choice. There's nothing. The alternative to this, the alternative to affirmative action is historically Black colleges. You know, HBICs are what fill that void, but not everybody can go to HBICs. And not only that, not everyone wants to go to HBICs. And even then, people should be going to diverse colleges to begin with. So, I mean, you know, what, like, that sentiment echoed Justice Sotomayor's dissent. The court subverts the constitutional guarantee of equal protection by further entrenching racial inequality in education. The very foundation of our democratic government and pluralistic society, she wrote. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the court's first Black female justice, also chimed in saying, with let them eat cape obliviousness, today the majority pulls the ripcord and announces color blindness for all by legal fiat. But deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. Yeah, pretty much. Indeed, the reality is that that in those places where affirmative action has been eliminated, there has been a severe drop in minority and particularly African American admissions. NYU law professor Melissa Murray was acting dean at the University of California, Berkeley in 2016 and 2017 when a state referendum barred the use of race in college admission decisions. There was an immediate drop-off in the number of African American students that was both a confluence of the change in the admissions policy, but also African American students not wanting to go to Berkeley under these conditions. People don't want to be spotlighted. There is a kind of comfort in numbers, and it was very difficult for a very long time to recruit under those conditions. Indeed, the situation got so bad, she says, that she had to go to the president of the state university system to get permission to place clusters of African American students in classes instead of sprinkling them around, leaving minority students alone to speak their mind when subjects of race were discussed. I joined the stream late. Do you think affirmative action is good? I've heard that admission rates of minorities increase, but the graduation rates of minorities remain the same. That would suggest that the program of affirmative action included more applicants, but not more qualified applicants. Okay, so Spaggle, that is correct. So I think here's the thing. Here's the big brain take on affirmative action. Affirmative action in a perfect world shouldn't be necessary. And in a vacuum, affirmative action isn't like great. But what affirmative action is addressing and what it is a tool for is a like kind of a direct tool to combat colorblind racism, which is to say, you know, if you've ever read like any of those studies where like two people apply for a job, one with a black sounding name, one with a white sounding name, and the white person gets called even though they have the same exact admissions, because there's just kind of a social comfort with the white sounding name. That happens in college admissions as well a lot of the times. And what affirmative action does is kind of lift the shroud on who's applying to colleges, and then kind of doesn't allow that like very latent racist sentiment that some people have in them. And I think everyone kind of has little biases. But when you're presented with those very like realistic, like obvious choices, you tend to go, okay, if these are both the same qualified, well, we have a lot of white kids here. And if they're going to be basically of equal quality, then, you know, maybe we should stock up on some more black people at our university. It would probably be good to have diverse educational population. Like that's kind of like the idea behind it. So in a vacuum, like affirmative action isn't great, but what it's there for, it came about in a time that also wasn't great. A time when, like black people just weren't quite as equal as everybody else in a way that like the same way like redlining would keep people out of like nicer neighborhoods. Now, yeah, absolutely. Unconscious racism. Thank you. I said that in the long form. I probably could have just said unconscious racism. Now to your second point, graduation rates probably did stay the same. But what that would tell you is that they're probably admitting people of like color from a bit more of a range of performance, because if you think about who attends colleges, right? A lot of times, if you're a college and before a affirmative action, you probably want to bring in, white kids go to nicer schools in the suburbs, so you can admit a lot of those kids. But in terms of black kids coming from like the inner city schools, there's probably a few that are, most colleges would end up taking maybe the top 2, maybe top 3 black students from an inner city school, and that would be their whole like, all right, cool, there's our black people. And under that kind of system, like, yeah, do some black people make it to college? Yeah, and some of them do, but not nearly the range of performance that you get out of like a population of white college students. White college students can make it in if they're the top and if they're kind of in the middle-ish area, whereas black students would often get picked only if they're at the top, meaning that you would end up leaving a lot of that like middle, like, anywhere between B to like C plus range. They just don't get to go to college, or at the very least, they don't get to go to good colleges and some of these better colleges. So it's kind of the case where like they're probably taking a few people who are slightly less qualified, but also you're increasing the population in like at your school in general, and all of those people, like 10 people instead of 3 getting to go to, we'll just use Harvard since this is the example they're using, getting to go to Harvard, they all get to take that education back to their neighborhoods, and then their neighborhoods can improve, and then their neighborhoods can reproduce more students like that and better than that. So like it's all about like reinvestment. It's very much a cycle. It's a reinvestment cycle, reinvesting in education and sending it back into the neighborhood so that it can reproduce constantly. And that's what white communities do. That's what a lot of Asian communities do. That's what a lot of Jewish communities do. This is a pretty normal thing and a pretty like reproducible thing that we've seen happen with a lot of communities. But black communities specifically just haven't had that ability because Jim Crow was only like taken out of law. We're in 20s, 60 years ago. We've had 60 years where that's like the last hard barrier. And even then it's like, I say hard barrier, like, but like that was nobody else has faced that hard of restrictions on their existence as a community as black people have in like 60 years. Like the worst it got for like Asian Americans are like people who first came over and had to build the fucking railroad, but like, and then like internment camps, and that's kind of it. Otherwise, Asian Americans have been left to kind of, succeed as they have done. Hispanic communities are also kind of on the uprise in that, but black communities, black people were property before. But apologies for how long my answer was, but because the schools have historically low investment. Yeah. But that's the long answer. It's the long, and I can't even say long and short of it. But that would be like kind of the long answer. It's not that like affirmative action is like great, and I do think that you'll get to a point where you don't need it, but I don't think we're there yet. And the fact that like African American admission into colleges dropped after affirmative action was repealed kind of tells you that all we're going to see now is less black people go to colleges, which means worse crime in the areas because people don't get to go to college. It's going to be worse outcomes. People are going to be poorer because college education's tracks with better outcomes economically. Like, at the end of the day, college is a way that people get out of poor neighborhoods. And if people aren't given those opportunities, then they'll never get out. And then instead, that process will keep reproducing. So, indeed, the situation got so bad. All right, I read that already. Door is left slightly open. Sorry, let me switch back. Now every school will be in that situation, or so it may seem. The court did not entirely close the door on racial considerations in college admissions. As Roberts put it, nothing in this opinion should be construed as prohibiting universities from considering any applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, nor did the court address the tactic of clustering minority students in classes. What's more, the court specifically left open the possibility that nations' military academies, I don't know why I said academias, because of their distinct interests, may be able to continue with their successful affirmative action programs, which have resulted in a very diverse officer group. Okay, wait a minute. If you're telling me it's good enough for the military when they're like, I don't understand how you could possibly think that a more diverse military is like better than a more diverse college campus. I want both of those places to reflect as diverse of a nation as we have. It's fucking okay. The issue is so sensitive because it raises the question of national security that the court has backed away from from following its own logic, said University of Berkeley. Yeah, okay, this person's as smart as me almost. He notes that a similar logic might apply to police forces seeking to recruit minorities as to ensure that a virtually all-white force would not be policing a majority black town. For the nation's colleges and universities, however, diversity will no longer be an acceptable rationale for taking race into account. Let's see. But in that case, admission doesn't help in any way. Graduation would help, but admission doesn't help. It spends money in order to make people feel better, but the material conditions remain the same. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. Getting into college admissions is absolutely helpful. As far as I know, let's see because I saw you mention what's it called? Admission rates, but graduation rates of minorities remain the same. I don't think the thing you said about graduation rates is contradictory to minority rates increasing. It's not that the more the rate is of what percentage, meaning if you're bringing in more black people and the admission rate and the graduation rate stays the same, that means they're coming in at the same rate and they're going out the same rate. Like, you haven't lost anything. But yeah, and also like especially for college, payment is also a big part of kind of the, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the like structural barriers that we have to keep certain individuals out of college, unfortunately. If you're poor, it's kind of hard unless you get a ton of scholarships to get into some of these like really, really, really expensive schools. And it can be hard on the family if they all pull together. Admission doesn't help. It spends money in order to make people feel better. But yeah, no, it like affirmative action and getting admissions, like making sure that the admission process, that you can take in a diverse range of people, like absolutely does help. What did I say? The graduation rate not changing is not a bad thing. That means that the graduation rate is staying strong even as you're bringing in a more diverse community. Because some people would say like, oh, well, if we're bringing in like some underqualified people, the graduation rate would go down, right? But if it stays the same, then that means they were perfectly qualified, or at the very least they were qualified like enough that they didn't affect the graduation rate. If the problem of minority graduation rates are rooted in primary education, then we should invest more in education for the younger people, not just accept more people on the level. I mean, I want like education for everybody. Like we should be funding and putting people through. Like my perfect world is we just fund education K through college. That's my perfect world, but we don't unfortunately have that. We do have to work with the system that we have right now, which we should be funding schools. But unfortunately, the way that we fund schools, I'm not sure if you're aware, is based on property taxes. And that's why you see a lot of suburbs have a lot nicer schools than schools in the inner city, because they not only own property, but because that property is worth more, all of those taxes come together and go to fund a really nice school in the suburbs. Whereas if you're in the inner city, you probably, maybe you own your home, but the actual home price is really low. So your actual housing tax, so your actual property taxes are really low. And then your school is shit. Like that's how we fund schools is tied to a really, really pretty fucking racist, but more than anything, classist metric. Because we pretty much fund schools based on if the people around you, if like the neighboring area is poor or rich. That's kind of how we fund schools. Thursday decisions are likely to cause ripples throughout the country, and not just in higher education, but in selective primary and secondary schools like Boston Latin in Massachusetts, Thomas Jefferson High School in Virginia. Hey, Thomas Jefferson High School. Selective primary and secondary. Interesting. Why did they mention Thomas Jefferson? I went to that. Well, I didn't attend that school, but I did go for football games. And Bronx High School of Science in New York. Ultimately, effects will be felt in every aspect of the nation's economy, educational and social life, from the Rooney Rule that requires a minority applicant be considered in all NFL coach hiring decisions to employment and promotion decisions, DEI programs in schools and workplaces, and much more. God damn it. Never feels like this is blowing enough. Okay. We're going to be fighting about this for the next 30 years, said Harvard law professor Randall Kennedy. Edward Bloom, who for decades has been a one-man crusader against everything from the landmark 65 Voting Rights Act. Oh, I wonder what his politics are like. To affirmative action in higher education, plans to challenge some corporate boards on racial preference grounds. And he says he knows of other plans to challenge minority scholarship and fellowship programs. Jesus Christ. This dude just wants black people. Edward, whoever this guy is, Edward Bloom, we're gonna note this now. Pretty open racist. Like this guy fucking hates minorities. UC's Carabel notes that there are already employment lawsuits pending, and quote, by the logic of this decision, I would think that racial discrimination as defined by the court will be banned in employment as well. Oh, great, cool. So you can go back to racially discriminating when employing people. That's nice. It's going to open Pandora's box across the country and across institutions and industries. Great. Yes, if we bring in 50% more minorities and the graduation rates stay the same, then it seems like there are a lot of people who are being left behind because of affordability. Well, yeah, there's a lot of people always being left behind in terms of affordability. Affordability is like might be the biggest barrier. I would have to look into it, but affordability is going to be a huge barrier for a lot of people. But yeah, if you're bringing in a bunch of minorities and your graduation rate stays the same, that means they're on par with the last batch of graduates that you had. How the case came to be. The court's decision came in cases involving two elite institutions, one of the oldest public universities, University of North Carolina, and the other, the oldest private university, Harvard. Bloom, the anti-affirmative act, he's a racist, likely chose these highly visible schools as his legal targets precisely because of their elite status. UNC did not admit black graduates until Okay. UNC did not admit black undergraduates until 1955, and then only after it was offered to by the federal courts. It was ordered to by the federal courts. Sorry, I don't know why I said offered. Harvard, by contrast, became the model for affirmative action programs in 1978, when the Supreme Court cited the school's consideration of race as similar to other traits the school relied on to ensure a diverse student body. Thus, the court said back then that race could be one of many factors that the school considered, just as other characteristics were considered. Geography, or being raised on a farm, or special achievements in everything from science to athletics, or being a so-called legacy student, the son and or daughter of someone who attended Harvard, which is bullshit, by the way. That system, reaffirmed twice by the Supreme Court, has remained in place, not just at Harvard, but at most of the institutions of higher learning across the United States, until Thursday, when the court, as it did last year in the abortion case, upended decades of its own precedents. Now, okay, so I didn't know this about Harvard, but that kind of bolsters my argument a little bit. If Harvard, one of the most elite schools, understood that in 1978, that having a diverse college population would improve the performance of its students, then I think that actually bolsters my argument quite a bit, considering if they're taking into account like geography and like all of these like kind of intrinsic intangibles. Like, it seems like they were taking like a really like, all right, like what's the like what kind of people can we let into here? And as long as they're like, you know, as long as they're performing it on objective testing and stuff like that, on a level that we find suitable, it'd be good if we had like farm boys meeting with like suburban, fucking golf kids or whatever. Like, I think that's really good. That's again, that kind of bolsters my argument. Like, Harvard has been a very good school for a very long time, and clearly, this is a system that has worked for them. The court majority made clear that it agreed with students for fair admissions, which sued Harvard and UNC, claiming, among other things, that the schools discriminated against Asian American students who had SAT and grade scores higher than any other racial group, including whites, and who made up at Harvard, for instance, 29% of the entering class last year. SFFA asserted that the number should have been higher than that, though Asians are just 7.2% of the population. Wait, what? They make up 29%, but they're only 7.2% of the population? Interesting. Okay. Harvard, in defending its current iteration of affirmative action, noted that each class has only 1,600 slots, but by the numbers, it has thousands of equally qualified applicants. In the class of 2019, for instance, it had 35,000 applicants, 3,700 of them with perfect math SAT scores, 2,700 with perfect verbal SAT scores, and more than 8,000 with perfect grade point averages. There are no similar figures for the most recent incoming class at Harvard, but the number of applicants in 2023 has nearly doubled in the last 4 years. Rates reduced directly in proportion to the increased admission after affirmative action, then the affirmative action program would be an effective way to work against historical racism. But if the graduation rates reduce directly in proportion, to increased admission after affirmative action, then the affirmative action program would be an effective way to work against historical racism. But if increasing admission led to lowered graduation, then affirmative action would be a failed project. Do you agree? Yes. If my reading comprehension is correct, yes. If increasing admissions led to lower graduation, then affirmative action would be a failed project. Well, okay. So I suppose you're asking kind of two different questions, because the questions of whether affirmative action gets people through college compared to does it allow people the opportunity to get into colleges is very different. Affirmative action gets you in, essentially. It does not keep you there, but it does get you into college, not necessarily get you through college. Not everyone's a good student. I could probably, if I went to college, if I used some affirmative action program, I wouldn't make it through college. Not because my grades aren't good. My grades were fine, but I'm not a good student. I've never been good at school. I've been good at other things. I've been a lot better as a employee than I ever was a student. I just never took the schooling process. But yeah, if the graduation rate reduced directly proportional. Oh, you did. Okay, you did respond. Wait, no, you didn't. Okay, cool. Let's see what the public thinks. The reaction to Thursday's decision may be consternation in some quarters, but public opinion on affirmative action is not like abortion, a subject on which virtually every poll shows the public completely at odds with the court. Public opinion on affirmative action is more nuanced and more mixed. Polls on the subject conflict. Some show upwards of 60% approval of affirmative action, and others show less than 50%. Indeed, in liberal California, for instance, 57% of voters in 2020 cast their ballots against reinstating affirmative action in the state's public colleges and universities. Also, I also think this is actually a healthier way to address affirmative action. If the court is deciding like, hey, this needs to end eventually, then I do think like a referendum vote is, I think, a healthier way to kind of gauge like how much we need affirmative action. Because if a local population is like, yeah, I don't think we need this anymore, I think that's a little bit more tolerable than like a court who doesn't deal in college admissions, a court made up of 9 individual people in a country of millions. Like, I do think that leaving this up to localities to kind of decide upon, I think would be a little bit better. I'm not sure if I would I don't know if I would vote to repeal it, but I'd feel more comfortable with a decision one way or another. Let's see what the public. Okay, I'm not really care that much. Court's double take. Harvard's Professor Kennedy points to what he calls double talk in the Supreme Court's Thursday opinion. Take two signs, he says. A sign that says black people stay out, and contrast it with a sign that says black people welcome. Both have race in them. Are they truly both racially discriminatory? The Supreme Court, at least on one side of its mouth, seems to say yes, they're both racially discriminatory. But at the end of the Supreme Court's opinion, it says, well, of course, one can look favorably on someone who's overcome racial impediments. Impediments. I didn't know that was a word. Impediments? No, it's impediments. Okay. Impediments. I'm stupid. I think we are at a very critical point, said Columbia President Bollinger, who earlier in his career shaped the affirmative action program at the University of Michigan, a program that was upheld in 2003. He says the landscape of admissions systems now shifting markedly with the demise of school rankings and less emphasis on standardized test scores. Columbia, he notes, has more veterans than any other Ivy League college. Quote, I think there will be a lot of experimentation in admissions, as there should be over the next decade. The magnitude of Thursday's decision was emphasized by the fact that in all, 6 justices wrote separately, and 3 justices spoke for more than 40 minutes from the bench. Wrote separately, right. Bench. The Chief Justice in the majority, Thomas concurring, and Sotomayor in dissent. Indeed, in print, the Supreme Court's decision plus dissents and concurrences reached a book-sized 237 pages. Jesus. Race has never been any easy subject in America to deal with, and it's about to get a lot harder. Yep. Oh yeah, let's take a look at Jackson and Thomas's opinions. All right. The only black members of the Supreme Court, Justice Clarence Thomas and Ketanji Brown Jackson, openly traded barbs in their opinions Thursday at the High Court, dealt what may be a death blow to the use of race in college admissions. That they would disagree on the subject is hardly surprising. Thomas, the court's longest-serving justice and perhaps its most conservative member, rose to public prominence more than 3 decades ago as a strict critic of affirmative action. Yeah, no shit, he's a fucking pick-me black guy. Tell me about it. Jackson, the court's newest justice, has long been a proponent of diversity efforts, and in one of the first cases she heard last fall, she made headlines for forcefully defending the idea that the Constitution allows and even encourages race-conscious policies to rectify the nation's legacy of racial discrimination. Oh yeah, that's also kind of ridiculous, because it's like, yeah, we've never been a race-blind country, and certainly when the Constitution was written, we weren't. However, the acrimony and the back and forth between the pair is unusual for the Supreme Court. Much of their exchange on race in American society seemed particularly prickly and personal. Thomas, who headed the Equal Empowerment Opportunity Commission before being nominated to a federal appeals court. And then the Supreme Court by President H.W. Bush devoted 7 pages to his 58-page concurring opinion to critiquing Jackson's dissent. He rebutted Jackson's arguments in favor of race-conscious admissions and repudiated what he described as her grim outlook on racial equality in America. Quote, as she sees things, we are all inextricably trapped in a fundamentally racist society. Really? It's, well, certainly racial. The idea that we have races kind of means, like, understand, race is a social construct. What is white and what is black is wholly up to every person who looks at a, like, at another person. Like, there is no point. There is no objective point where there is a black person and a white person. That's not, there is no such thing as that. And the idea that Clarence Thomas would get up on here and say, oh, to think that we live in a world, we live in a nation where, like, race has ever been determinative or has ever been, it has ever been a fundamental part. Like, yeah, idiot. It was kind of a fundamental part when people who looked like you were fucking property. And then people created myths as to why you were better as property. Why the white man was so gracious to take care of black people in this country. For fuck's sake, man. Have some semblance of history. And that's what this is. That's what a lot of Clarence Thomas's race bullshit is. It's this, like, fictional, this fictional universe, this Earth, like, 825, whatever the fuck he's on, this multiverse where the Constitution and all people walk around in this frictionless, this frictionless sphere where nobody has problems with each other, where there's no possible way that people take race into consideration for things, where people don't think about this, where laws are not written with the intent to be racist, even when they're not explicitly so. This is childish. This is so fucking childish to sit here and think, look, the Constitution, this was written by great men. At no point could there possibly be biases written into the Constitution by human beings who all live with biases. We are all governed in a way by our biases, by the things we enjoy, by the values we hold, and the values we oppose. And every time a document is written, every time a law is written, every single time, it is an exercise in our values. It is an exercise in our bias. Every single time. Every word you write, every opinion you share, every tweet you retweet, all of it drives towards and can be brought back to what you find valuable and what you support and what you oppose as well. So this idea that law is different from everything else that humans create is absurd. Like architecture, like music, like film, like critique, laws are written by man, and unfortunately they have the same pitfalls of man as well. As she sees things, we are inextricably trapped in a fundamentally racist society. We have the original sin of slavery and the historical subjugation of black Americans still determining our lives today. Wrote Thomas, 75, who in 1991 became the second black person after Thurgood Marshall. God damn, what a fucking drop-off. To be appointed to the High Court. The panacea, I don't know what the fuck that means, she counsels is to unquestionably accede to the view of elite experts and reallocate society's riches by racial means as necessary to, quote, level the playing field, all as judged by racial metrics. I strongly disagree. Well, unfortunately for Thomas, what he's missing here is that there's data to back up the fact that, what's it called? That wealth distribution has been pretty awful to black people in this country. And the idea that you would want to fix that by, like, you know, creating a system where black people could get into college a little bit easier, and even a little bit easier, really isn't like closing the gap. It's just like, it's one less excuse colleges can use to not admit black people. You know, and he wants to do away with that. And he wants to do away with it because he already graduated college, and, you know, he's perfectly fine with kicking down the ladder after he's made it to the top now. Jackson's 28-page dissent defended the use of race-conscious programs to ameliorate the pervasive present-day effects of America's history of state-sponsored racism. Gulf-sized race-based gaps exist with respect to the health, wealth, and well-being of American citizens. Her dissent began. Allowing colleges to consider applicants' race has universal benefits because it helps to close those gaps and thereby promotes equality, she wrote. Yeah, if you go to college, you are more likely to be wealthy, which means you are more likely to be healthy, and you're probably going to be, you know, your well-being is going to be taken care of a little bit. It's almost like education is, you know, it's a key factor to success in America. And insisting that colleges and universities avoid using race in the admissions process would not erase those profound disparities. With Let Them Eat Cape Obliviousness, today the majority pulls the ripcord and announces colorblindness for all by legal fiat, but deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. Thomas, who mentioned his junior colleague by name 18 times in opinion, I wonder why, assailed not only Jackson's views on the subject, but also her motivations. Justice Jackson uses her broad observations about statistical relationships between race and select measures of health, wealth, and well-being to label all blacks as victims. Well, it's not really about labeling individuals as victims. It's about identifying a systemic problem that we have. That if we are all equal, we should see, at the very least, more equivalent rates of success and failure. But we don't see that. We see vast gaps between health, between well-being, between success, and between failure when we look at different racial groups, specifically black and white people. So, you know, he can bitch and moan about these statistics that she's referencing, but the only thing he's got to bring to the table is, oh, well, I just don't think it's healthy for black people's, mentality, to which, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you were the hive mind of all black people, Clarence Thomas. Let's see. Justice Jackson, Brian, Thomas wrote, I cannot. Okay, here we go. Justice Jackson used her broad well-being and label all blacks as victims. Her desire to do so is unfathomable to me. I cannot deny the great accomplishment of black Americans, including those who succeeded despite long odds. Yeah. And if you would like to see more black people succeed, then should they all have to struggle through longer odds than everybody else just because of the color of their skin? Again, this is the case where Clarence Thomas at the end of the day is somebody that, like, made it and is now like, what? Why don't the rest of you black people just make it like me? Even though, like, it's like, yeah, you were the top, like, 1% who gets to make it. And we can either have it so only the top 1% of the black community gets to make it, or, like white people, there's kind of a broad range of, like, you know, how far people get to go. There are a lot of white people who didn't graduate college, who didn't even go to college, who do perfectly fine. But there's a lot of black people who didn't do either of those things, who don't even do as well as the people who didn't go to college in white communities. Like, there's just such an obvious, there's such obvious inequality in our systems. But, like, for this guy, since he already made it, he's like, I don't give a shit anymore. Let me finish this paragraph and I will read that very long paragraph. Okay. Justice Jackson's race-infused worldview falls flat on each step. Individuals are the sum of their unique... Oh, fuck off, dude. We're not talking about... Oh, Jesus. I hate when they do this. Because it's like, we're not talking about individuals. College admissions is not about one admission paper. It's about a large swath, a like study full of thousands of admissions. What matters is not the barriers they face, but how they choose to confront them. And their race is not to blame for everything, good or bad. Well, okay. So, and keep in mind, this is flattening of like the dynamics in this country. The barriers, like what matters is not the barriers they face. Meaning that like if you have a kid in the inner city growing up around like, you know, quite frankly, gang members, growing up around with like poor educational standards, and they make it to like a 3.9 GPA, and then you've got some white kid, or even we'll even make it some black kid who lives in the suburbs, you know, wealthy, maybe like related to Clarence Thomas. You know, they go to a nice private school with very well funded, nice area, a lot of well-off families. They do really well. They get a 4.0 GPA. And the idea that like looking at those two people and saying, oh yeah, they worked like hard, they worked the equal amount of like effort to get here is fucking absurd. How like the environment that you have to like, the environment that you're in absolutely informs the like how far you've come. Absolutely informs that. People who come from broken households and still become like the first person to go to college, the first graduate in their family, the first business owner, any of these things, like we understand this as being like unique and like really commendable when people make it through that. Whereas like, you know, if the dominoes have always lined up for you, if you had every advantage you could get, and you know, then like it's not quite as impressive. And quite frankly, it's like I would rather the person who had to really work hard and really. But again, if we leave these colleges to make these decisions, will they take the kid who worked 3 times as hard as a suburban kid but got 0.1% less on their GPA? Or will they take the 4.0 and go, well, you got a 4.0. That's all that matters. Like, this is erasing people's experiences. And because of that situation, the one that I just described, is what's going to happen. It's going to keep some black kids out of college who should be going to these colleges. And the race is not to blame for everything, good or bad, that happens in their lives. A contrary, myopic worldview based on individual skin color, Thomas also accused Jackson of ignoring the oppression of other groups, including Asian Americans and white communities that have faced historical barriers. Okay, I would really love to hear. Asian Americans absolutely do have some of these pitfalls, but like, yeah, this is the straightest face you could give to. This is the face of white communities that have faced historical barriers. This is the face of I'm completely full of shit. Jesus, no other justice joined Thomas's concurring opinion. Christ. Okay, let's read. I've kind of had enough of this. I've had enough of this. I've had enough of reading this fucking piece of shit's writings. Okay, let's see. All right, but rather something more fundamental like primary school. Okay. Let's say 20% of minorities were admitted to college and they graduated at a rate of 50%. And then using affirmative action. Sorry, my headphones are like kind of blocking some of this. Affirmative action, 60% of minorities were admitted. 60% of minorities were admitted, but the rate of graduation reduced to 10%. To me, that would say that the program admitted more people. However, it seems like admission was not the primary problem for these people. In that case, increased admission and reduced graduation, it seems like the problem isn't rooted during the admission phase, but rather something more fundamental like primary school. I mean, our primary schools, again, I said this earlier, our primary schools are funded by, what's it called? Are funded by property taxes. So they're not funded in a consistent manner. They're funded based on the neighborhood. So if you have a poor neighborhood, you get a poor school. If you have a rich neighborhood, you have a rich school. 20%. Let me just read these numbers. My dyslexia and dysgraphia is kicking in. 20% of minorities are admitted to college. Okay. Do you mean, okay, so I'm assuming you mean like 20%. Okay, 20% of them graduated at a rate of 50%. And then using the affirmative action, 6% of minorities were admitted. rate of graduation reduced to 10%. Mm-hmm. However, it seems like admission was not the primary problem for these people. I'm not anti-race consciousness, but I just want people to aim their efforts on the proper places. Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, this goes back to like the also, I want to say that's not what we're seeing though. We're not seeing graduation rates reduce due to affirmative action. Affirmative action has not impacted graduation rates. If we saw this, this would be a case that, hey, it seems like we're, you know, like the schools are being a little too loose, but understand that like even the idea that like, hey, you're letting in too many like low income, probably black people, like what are those people supposed to do? Like, where are they supposed to get their education? Like what we're like the problem here is that like this is all about access to education. And while we don't have a system that is universal, which is what I want, while we don't have a system that is universal, we do have to work in the private and public, you know, admission process. And the way that you're going to get into that, and like, you know, at the end of the day, the way that college admissions are decided are really, really vague. Like if you've ever, I don't know if you've like been to college, if you applied to college, how old you are, but like, I'm sure you've heard the stories of people who write, like the kid who wrote "This is bold" or whatever the fuck for his college paper. Like he did something outlandish, right? That should never get him into college, but it got him in because it was unique, right? And it's why like college admissions is really intangible, but there is an element to that. There is an element to that like looseness that can lead to, you know, because we don't have some standards in some places, you get something like where UNC doesn't accept black people until 1955. They haven't been accepting black people into a state college for even 100 years. One of the oldest colleges we have for like for less than 100 years. So like that kind of tells you that like, okay, clearly these institutions kind of have a preference for the students they want in, which is going to be the top echelon of any school they're taking admissions from. So like, what do you do with the rest of those students? The B plus students, the B students, the C plus students, where do they go? Do they get to go to any of these colleges? Will they just always get kind of out like pushed out by somebody with a slightly higher GPA? Colleges need to be, in my opinion, less of spaces for people who already excel in school and more places where people just simply seek further education. I'm not like, I'm all for, like, I'm fine if colleges want to, you know, I guess control for really like, I guess high value students, or better put, high level performing students. But like, we can't just have the people who go to college be the top 5 to 10% of every single school. Like everybody else needs to be able to get an education. So like, you know, in my world, like we wouldn't even be bothering with a lot of this stuff. You would probably go to your state school. There would obviously be some like testing and certain things, but like at the end of the day, like, you know, we need people to get an education, and affirmative action was a tool that we were using to kind of increase the amount of people from these neighborhoods to get to go to college, which now might not, you know, that number's probably going to reduce. And that overall, I don't think is going to be a good thing. Whether like we think that it's like nice and gives you a warm and fuzzy feeling because like affirmative action is rather race conscious, but like our laws have never not been race conscious. Like the history of this country is subjugated black people a lot of the way. Again, I emphasize that like black people have only become like, and I say this like, you know, not even like really 100%, but like we only think of black people as having all of the rights that everybody has in 100% of this country since the 1960s. We are 60 years into the full enfranchisement of all African Americans in this country. That's not a long time. That's a really, really short amount of time. And because of that, they've been held back from generational wealth, educational attainment, educational opportunity. There's just, and like, if we just sat there and said, all right, black people, now you're equal, you know, history be damned. Now you have full enfranchisement. Now, you know, you're into the world. You're as equal as everybody else. It's just a lie, because those communities are, you know, there's no, like, for hundreds of years and decades afterwards, there were laws written to keep them out of spaces. And later on, when we decided to pass laws that says, now you're going to include them, now we have the argument of like, oh, is that racist? Like, wait, it's racist to demand that you include black people in this? Like, it's silly. And regardless, this is just going to reduce, I stand by this, regardless of everything. What I think is going to happen is it's just going to reduce the admission rate of blacks into colleges. That's all that's really going to happen. And that's an overall net negative. Nobody benefits from that. It's just, you know, now it's colorblind, but under a colorblind lens, now black people just don't go to college as much. Like, isn't that great? You know, grades, and that's fine. The focus should be on increasing young minorities as grades, not reduced to colleges. Well, I don't really care about colleges standards in terms of like what I care about. Like, I don't care about colleges acceptance standards. I care about like the standards that they're getting out. What students colleges take in, I want to be pretty diverse and pretty in a pretty big range, but I want their output to be rather consistent. Their output is much more of what I care about than what they're fed. And right now, colleges have the ability to choose their students. So, like, you know, every college wants to be, and the only reason colleges want to have all of the highest performing students is so that they can point to you know, standards, and they can point to these things so that then they can turn around and charge more for admission. I don't even I don't like the system we have, but it is the system that we have right now. And we either take one where more black people are going to be attending, or we pick one that isn't. And this is the Supreme Court mandating that we choose the one that isn't. But all that aside, should we do the Diet Coke story? Maybe we'll do this next week. I kind of want to do videos a little bit. Also, like, my voice is starting to, I need water. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to save this. I'll read this on the side at some point. Just do, is there like a, we'll just do this. Oh, no. No, just do it like this. Son of a gun. Okay. There we go. I'll just do that. All right. Let's shift into the fun half, the legally distinct fun half. And then should we do the SHEIN story? Yeah, I think the SHEIN. Yeah, maybe we can do the SHEIN thing, and then we'll get to what we can get to. Sound good? Cool. I'll be back in like 90 seconds or so. I need water desperately. Okay.
So do not shop at Target, or else you're gay.
Spit in my mouth, look in my eyes.
Just to simplify this, I think we're just going to use your...
I may keep the pantyhose on. This feels kind of good, actually.
Larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day.
Beat it up, N-word.
What is more important? You are culture. That's a joke.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water. They turn the friggin' frogs gay.
I like black guys a lot.
The alpha males are back.
right. There we go. What did I say? We're doing the SHEIN thing, right? Yeah. Okay. Stop. Wait. Is this the video I want? Yeah, it is. Okay. Oh, let's see. My naive solution: equalize everyone under the law and help everyone who struggle economically. Poor black people, poor white people, they all struggle, so let's help them out. If black people need more help because they are more poor, so be it. Maybe I'm just being dumb, but I feel like that system will make everyone happy. Well, yeah, I mean, no, it's not. It's not that it's dumb. It's just like if we could start from zero, that is the world that I want. I personally would love to see more class consciousness and an understanding of people, like in economic, like people have an understanding of each other and relationships to each other on an economic level and less on like a racial level, because race is so malleable. It's so like ephemeral. It's a woozy, it's a wazi, it's fairy dust, right? But like, and whereas like when we talk about economics, we talk about class, especially, this is something that's easily measurable, that everyone in certain classes can kind of come together and understand about each other. That like we all have kind of like shit, like, you know, broke college kids all over the country, regardless of what school they're going, regardless of what region of the country they're in, they kind of all have this like shared experience of like living on ramen and staying up late to studying and drinking and going to, you know, pubs and everything else, right? They all have kind of this shared experience. And like, I think people have shared experiences more in like their classes than they do in terms of like, in terms of race, or at the very least, it's I think a healthier way to look at things, because it's not about, you know, if you share the same melanin count as somebody. I mean, sure, that like gives you some things in common, but like your interests are going to be so widely different. You know, especially if you're from like different regions of the country. But yeah, I mean, it's just if I could snap my fingers, if we could do that, if I could Thanos snap us all into a, you know, into a flat equal like realm, then I would. But it's just unfortunately not the world we live in. You know, unconscious bias is always kind of there, and a lot of our systems were unfortunately built with that unconscious bias in mind, and or at the very, maybe not in mind, I guess, with the unconscious bias kind of programmed in already. So it's just like you have to address that stuff like in a way that isn't, I think, as obscure, because like racism can be really opaque sometimes, and the way systems like legitimize racism can be very opaque a lot of the times. And the only way you address that is by essentially revealing it and like making that very clear. And affirmative action, it was just one way to do that. It's a way to very easily like identify, hey, this is a black person from a like worse area. Are you really going to turn this person down because their grades were slightly worse, but they went through so much more to get those grades, you know, or whatever their situation is. But yeah, I mean, if we lived in a perfect world, like I would like, yeah. I mean, I don't know about net value, but like, you know, I get what you mean. But yeah, it's just, we just don't live in a world where, you know, we live in an eternally gray world. And because of that, we, you know, hard solutions or stuff like that. It's just, you know, we just don't live in that flat of a world, unfortunately. Anyway, I mean, some people think we do, but that's not me. Anyway, right. SHEIN. If you've ever bought, or if you know about fast fashion, or if you've been on, I don't know, I'm assuming they like advertise. I'm pretty sure I've seen advertisements on like Instagram of like selling a bunch of clothes. They're always from like China or Thailand or any one of those like sweatshop countries. And recently brought over a bunch of influencers, TikTok influencers apparently, to I guess legitimize or to market their you know, their brand to people, to kind of put a happy face on all of the sweatshops that they operate, and this has kind of turned into a bit of a shitstorm for some content creators, some TikTok people, which I'm not one of them, so I'm okay with that. So let's take a look. I just, yeah, fast fashion's kind of interesting. I don't know a whole lot about it. I know the like basics, but anyway, let's.
Remember this? When people were getting help messages from SHEIN workers, we couldn't confirm
Wait, what? Y'all be getting shopping from SHEIN. What the
the validity of these images,
Need your help. What the fuck, dude? These people are doing the help me sign from the kidnappers.
but they did spark internet speculation into
no.
the conditions of SHEIN factories. And this undercover investigation proves our worst fears, that SHEIN workers are exploited horrifically. Let's talk about it. In one factory, workers are paid roughly $500 a month to make...
Okay, I thought this would be a different kind of video. I thought this was going to be more of like that was a very professional looking... I guess this is more Perfect Union. Either way, ABC News, Australia.
I got some new summer. Just got this dress. Okay, I'm
Thank
obsessed.
you. This is more what I wanted.
Love it. I hope this
Where's
helps
my
you pick the
playlist?
perfect pair.
If you like clothes, you may notice nowadays that your social media feed may be swarming with fast fashion content.
Absolutely.
So much color.
Summer is spring hot.
It's big business, led by Chinese player SHEIN, which made $20.5 billion in revenue last
Precisely,
year.
Spaggle.
They're almost...
You solve a lot of economics. You solve a lot of racism, because all economics really is the you don't solve all of it, obviously, and quite frankly, there's no solving racism. People will always have internalized negative biases, about people of different skin colors. But the thing that's important is that the systems and the structures that you build for your society, specifically here in the United States, don't reflect those and are more conscious of universal, universal traits, where, wealth is a universal trait that isn't like the level is not universal to everybody, but everyone has wealth. Everyone has some kind of, monetary place in the country.
9,000 new online arrivals a
Why
day.
does it say 3?
And the
I know why that
prices
says 3.
are super cheap. You can get a top for $5, a fetching rhinestone belt for 10, or these practical sunglasses for 6. And who is manufacturing the success? China. Who is paying for this success? Also China. But who is driving this success? Millions of Gen Z youngsters who are obsessed with TikTok.
Jesus Christ. Okay, can we, so I don't spend a lot of time on TikTok. Actually, I don't spend any time on TikTok. Is it really this bad? I've heard so much, just how predatory TikTok is. And I'm sure it is, but man, it seems like it's in a uniquely bad place in terms of its influence on people.
We want to fit in, conform to what's trendy, what's cool. We want people to think we're cool as well. And I think fast fashion brands sort of play into that fear that we're missing out. Just as quickly as it comes in, it just goes. People forget about it. People get rid of the clothes that they buy for very cheap prices. And I think that's what fast fashion is.
Lizzie Ko is a big name on TikTok with a whopping 168,000 followers. SHEIN is one of the notable fast fashion brands lately. What has given it rise in recent times?
I think social media definitely, especially with TikTok being a very big thing during quarantine or lockdown, sort of saw a rise maybe in 2019, 2020.
SHEIN's TikTok hashtag has more than 24 billion views. The most popular are SHEIN hauls, with users posting outfits from bulk orders.
$2,000.
Just came in.
Bro, y'all need bills. I'm just gonna be that person. If you're spending $2,000 on fast fashion, you need bills, my friend. You need go pay the electric bill. Go pay the internet bill. Jesus, no, stop it.
I sort of fell into the trend of just bulk buying SHEIN products. I didn't even need it, but sort of that cheap price tag entices you, thinking, oh, I can get a top for $10 or something.
SHEIN's popularity is inspiring many other fast fashion players like Zaful, Fashion Nova and Pretty Little Thing.
the website sort of layout and design is very, very similar. And I think they try to make the consumer a little bit sort of, how do I say it? Remind the consumer about what they love about SHEIN, so they're trying to replicate that success.
And what else do they all have in common? They all rely on Chinese manufacturing.
In my opinion, I think the only ways the government should involve itself in fighting racism is in the axis of economics, because we can assign actual numbers to it. Vague definitions of racism are useful for cultural analysis, but the government can't ever measure their effect if it's all conceptual. So I wouldn't say I agree in a maximalist take of that, only because I don't think it should. It's more of like that is gonna be I think what the main way is. But like what you're leaving out there, like under that conception, keep in mind you wouldn't be able to combat the Jim Crow laws, because Jim Crow laws were written in a way that were not racist, but like their effects all were the disenfranchisement of black people. It's not that like poll taxes as a good one. Less black people were able to collect money from the slave era, right? And because black people at a certain time during Jim Crow weren't well educated because they had just been freed from being property, they implemented reading tests, poll taxes. They implemented the grandfather clause so that people who couldn't read, whether you're black or white, maybe you can't read, but if you're black, you can't read because you were a slave. Oh, look at that, you can't vote now. And if you were white, oh, you can't read. But we got a grandfather clause. If your grandfather voted, which black people didn't have a right to vote back then, and certainly their grandfathers didn't because they were property. Looks like you can't read and you can't read, but only the black guy doesn't have that exception that we carved out. So, like, keep in mind, like, it's not just economics, but economics is a good way to look at it, but it's not the only way. The government absolutely should be keeping an eye on stuff like that. And laws are still written in that way. You can still write laws that are colorblind, but somehow only affect one race. Like if I wrote a law that it was like death penalty for I don't know. People who don't use seasoning on their food or something. Certainly there are people who are non-white who don't put seasoning on their food, but which group is that going to affect more than the other? That's like one very silly example, but point stands. Sticking to this in a very spectrum way. Sorry. No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. To me, racist refers to anything that holds race as a relevant factor, where race is a social construct rooted in non-whiteness. Yeah, okay. So you're right about the second part. You're wrong about the first part, I think. Because, like, you're looking at it as, like, something is or isn't, where, like, racism isn't... the reason I said racism is kind of opaque, because, like, especially the way we write laws, it's all about in the way you write them, and it's all about kind of in the way that you leave certain things out, in the way that you word certain things. So again, it just goes back to, you can write a racist law without saying the word black once, without saying the word African American once. Go look at some of the Jim Crow laws for a good example of this. And stuff like this kind of happens. If you recognize, if you're familiar with, what am I thinking? Gerrymandering. If you're familiar with gerrymandering, nowhere when they draw these maps do they mention race at all. They just happen to, select so that like all the black people end up in one small district. It's not, they come up with different reasons. They're like, oh, because I don't know, because I like the shape of this district or whatever. Like, you can come up with any version of that, but like, you can skate around that stuff, and being aware of that and aware of that kind of like, I guess soft racism, or like, maybe like hidden racism, your secret racism. That's what you want to look out for.
In the first
hello,
2
Karsten.
months of this year, about 6 billion meters of
Holy
fabric
shit.
was produced in China.
That's a lot of white shirts.
SHEIN, as an example, operates like an e-commerce platform for smaller Chinese suppliers.
SHEIN can further sometimes squeeze the manufacturing cost and transfer part of this cost to other, franchise suppliers and further lower down its manufacturing cost.
Dr. Lee says this model allows SHEIN to run product trials en masse. Meanwhile, suppliers bear some of the cost of unwanted items.
So maybe more than 90% of these items are not popular at all. They just need, a few items very popular, then they can guarantee the profit.
Oh my god.
While global consumers
I went to
hop
the
on
website and
latest
it's just
trends,
fucking ad
China
cancer.
has to deal with
Oh
waste
my
from
god.
these unwanted items.
What's like
China produces
the
more
normal
than 20 million tons of fashion-related waste products each year from production and used clothing.
Oh my god.
Researchers say SHEIN workers in China are producing roughly 120 pieces each per day.
We all work 11 to 12 hours.
Yeah, I work 12 hours.
And that's not 5 times a week, but 7 times a week. Usually they usually have one day off.
I don't work nearly as many days.
Researcher Timo Kolbrunner from
Oh,
Swiss
boy.
watchdog Public Eye has been investigating SHEIN.
Oh my
The most
god.
problematic aspect.
You know, I said I've never like paid attention to SHEIN, but oh my god. Yeah, like, good god. I can't deny that this shit is cheap as fuck. Always be weary whenever you see, like, where you're like, wow, that's really cheap clothing. There's kind of a reason for that. Jeez. Yeah, like some of the stuff I'm like, what the fuck? Oh man, yeah, that's like a warning sign. That's like a clear warning sign. Granted, I guess kind of everything comes from China these days. But still, oh my god. Christ above.
Are first the incredibly long working hours, then that no one of the workers has a contract, no one of the workers interviewed had received any social security benefits.
I don't even know how many. How do you even do 75 hours a week? How many hours do you have to do a day?
In Guangzhou.
You don't have any fire exit. You have like hallways that are blocked, and then sometimes we even found barred windows.
Oh, for salaried
In
people.
the 2021 Fashion Transparency
Well, the problem with
Index,
salaried people is like, I mean, yeah, the main thing you see with salaried people is they end up doing like so much fucking work, and then like they'll work 75 hours but only get paid, but their wage will reflect only maybe like 40 of that.
Its counterparts, like Fashion Nova, were among the world's least transparent fashion businesses.
Oh my god.
A spokesperson
SHEIN
for
enforces a
told
code of
China
conduct for all
Tonight
suppliers
that
we
they
conduct.
enforce a code of conduct for all suppliers and have strict audits.
Oh yeah, I bet they do.
Firms.
Oh yeah.
They said the company.
Yeah, if you have strict auditing, but then okay, so you can immediately know that this is bullshit because they say that they partner with third-party auditing firms, which like every time just means that whenever like an auditing firm or somebody does an investigation and finds wrongdoing, they just say, "Oh, the third-party firm that we hired never told us about this." The third-party audit firms are always just fall guys.
Is committed to protecting the environment, supporting communities, and empowering entrepreneurs. However, its Gen Z consumer base are voicing concerns over the fast fashion industry. The hashtag Boycott SHEIN now has over 4.8 million views on TikTok.
At first, when I purchased from SHEIN, it was sort of like a too good to be true moment. But
Usually
then reality
is.
starts to sink in, then you start to sort of uncover and understand the repercussions behind buying from a fast fashion company. And I sort of distance myself. And I feel like a lot of influencers that are sort of I'm in touch with also sort of distance themselves from fast fashion companies as well.
Sheesh.
Time will tell how SHEIN and its fashion peers will address these issues. Despite criticism, SHEIN is still China's most
Supposed to be
successful
Australia,
fast
but this
fashion
person
label.
sounds more British than
Now,
Australian.
This is Australia's #1 shopping app. Meanwhile, China will continue to grapple with the fast fashion cycle.
Yeesh. Yeah, So this is another good example, I think, of the neoliberal rot at the core of our economics these days. Mainly because at the end of the day, a lot of these companies are really just looking for wider margins on every product that they're making. So, when you see like, when we see companies ship their jobs over to Mexico or over to Taiwan or China or anywhere else, that's, and they'll say it's for, efficiency, or they'll say that, they're delivering savings into customers and any of that sort of stuff. Never fall for that shit. All it ever is an excuse for them British pronunciation. Yeah, that might be it. Damn, I got distracted because I saw Hong Konger and I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Fuck. Point is. All of these companies will ship all of their jobs to poor nations so that they can pay them almost nothing. Basically slave wages. And the only way that we combat a lot of this is through higher rates of unionization in the United States, or a, what I would like to see is an implementation of worker-owned companies, worker-owned, facilities, all that sort of stuff. Now, we're pretty far from that, but that's what I advocate for at the very least. This way, you don't have, one guy at the top of some company as a CEO deciding to ship out what? Hundreds of thousands of families' way of paying their bills, way of working, just at the snap of a finger because they want to make a few extra $1,000 every minute. So, not really worth it. All right, what should we? All right, let's see. But yeah, oh man, the fast fashion stuff. It also just kind of feels like you know how Uber hasn't really claimed to revolutionize taxis, and what we've really gotten is random people driving their own cars where Uber doesn't pay for their upkeep, Uber doesn't pay for their damage, Uber doesn't pay for really anything of the cars. It's just the person uses their own car and diminishes the car's value at their expense to make a few bucks on Uber, and meanwhile Uber doesn't have employees that they have to pay employment taxes to. Uber doesn't have investment costs into actual cars, where the only thing that Uber's really done is cut out labor in this case. It's the only revolution that's happened. We now have taxi drivers that, instead of having a car supplied by a taxi lot and an owner of that who has to pay that guy a wage and pay him any tips that he gets and everything else, now we just have people driving their cars, destroying them, and there's absolutely no forward investment by this company, Uber specifically. That's what all of this ends up feeling like to me, where instead of, just making clothes in the United States and decent warehouses, all these corporations have done, all these corpos have decided, what if we just shipped all this shit off to a poor country where we don't have to pay them, where we don't have to follow half or even a quarter of the labor laws? It sounds good. That's the revolution. The revolution is American middle class worker, you get cheap clothing because we found a way to implement legal slavery in other countries. That that's all it is. Oh, thanks, Spago. I appreciate that. But that's all it is. That's all it turns into. That's all these big revolutions are. It's just undercutting labor and making sure and taking away the ability for one to pay their bills, for one to feed their family, live in own a house, any of the normal things that our parents and grandparents did on factory work. But because all these corpos don't want to continue to pay people in America, they've decided, oh, we'll just move everything out of the country, or we'll just make everything a fucking tech app or whatever. It's all such fucking bullshit. And it's all these people who, just invest in these algorithms and in these tech corporations that all think they're changing the world. How many of them do we're changing the world for the better, we're doing this, we're doing that? All it is giving less people an ability to have an actual well-paying job. All right, let me read these from Carson. Sorry. Australia, right. In Europe, there's the same issue with the distortion of concurrency between counties, countries, and legislations. In France, there's a case in court pushing Uber to salary the drivers and deliverers. Yeah. Oh, thank God. I don't know. I know France from the outside as an American. I look at France and I have a certain reverence for the population's instinct to protest and an instinct to challenge their government that I wish we had here in a healthy way, not in a very unhealthy January 6th kind of way. But yeah, I mean, good for them. Hopefully they're able to implement that. I know that a few, I want to say it might be in New York, but I think in New York, Uber was threatening to increase a lot of their prices because there's a push in New York City to pretty much like demand, to force them to give out a like actual wage to drivers in New York City. And there's been like a threat from Uber of like, okay, if we do that, prices are gonna have to go up, even though like prices for Uber and everything else have skyrocketed since like the creation of it. Like I remember when like Uber was super fucking cheap, when it was the cheap alternative, but like they ran all the taxi corps out, which, not that I'm a big fan of taxi corporations or taxi businesses, I should say, more than anything else. But the minute they ran all of those local smaller businesses out, they just increased their prices because now they're the only seller. So was travail dissimule, or dissimulated work and through giver of orders. Ligne de hierarchie. Is that like hierarchy? Yeah, it's hierarchy. I took French, but my French is pretty bad. Ligne de hierarchie. Is that how you would say that? I don't know. It's been, how long has it been since I took French last? It's definitely been 10 years. No, what? No way. Wait, no. When did I take that? Yes, hierarchy links. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Did it? God, how long was that ago? Anywhere between 8 to 10 years, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, okay. Should we? Let's see. It's 10 o'clock now. Do I want to watch? God, it does. Telling me. Way too fast. I remember when I was young. Honest to God, I look back and I wish I had like gotten all the stuff. Like, well, I didn't have the money back then, which is the part that really sucks. But I wish I was doing this a lot sooner. But what are you gonna do? You have the money to do what you can when you can. Okay, so let's see. Is the morning? Oh, well, good morning. Morning to you. Let's see. What should we do? Conservative. Should we do Tatum? Okay, so I do want to take a look at. Okay. How does everybody feel about abortion? Is that an interesting topic to folks? Because I'm like super interested in this abortion debate with Detsiny. Unless I hear a dissent for the abortion topic, we're gonna watch some random sections of the whatever podcast. Is that what this is called? Yeah. Legal in France. Well, look. Stop bragging, okay? It's slowly falling apart here in the United States. All right. So if anybody's aware, maybe you might have heard of him. His name is Detsiny. He has blue hair. Recently went on the whatever podcast, decent name, I guess, to debate Lily Grace, who I don't know, and Kristen Hawkins, who I am familiar with, about abortion. I want to look at just a short clip to kind of give us a little taste here, and then we'll kind of flip around and like just kind of like get a little sampling of random like sections, because they all last like a couple minutes. So we'll take a look at those. But for now, let's take a look at this. This one seemed fun. I saw this exchange and was like, ooh, that seems spicy.
The term.
I think it's a horrific situation, and she needs support and care. And
yep, true. We all know this. I don't know why we're talking about it, but go ahead.
But what is the next step in that? It's not to take the life of this innocent, now conceived third party. It's not to end that life. That's not going to the 11-year-old. It's not going to un-traumatize the 11-year-old. In fact, it might traumatize her even more. By the time with a young survivor, it's usually into the second trimester. That's going to be a very traumatic act that now kills her baby, and she's still having a birth process just of a child.
Sure. So then if the 11-year-old is pregnant and is scared, and then she goes to a doctor looking for an abortion, should you charge her with murder?
No, because in that case, she's an 11-year-old who's the victim.
You can still charge adolescents with. You don't have to try him as an adult. You can try him as a child.
You need to answer the question.
You were saying that in your world, if you're wrong, it's the biggest genocide in the history of the fucking universe.
It is.
And then you were saying, in my world where I'm wrong, some women have been minorly inconvenienced
For 9 months.
For 9 months, big whoop. But that's not true. In your world, if you're wrong, 11-year-old girls are being convicted of murder
No,
or
no one
conspiracies
supports
to commit
that,
murder.
Destiny. No one supports that.
Yes,
What-
if you're an
she's
11-year-old
11 years
girl,
old.
could
Thank
your
you.
11-year-old
Please tell me
kill
what I
their
think.
younger brother?
I mean, theoretically, since you like hypotheticals, if there's
I
a
do
case,
like hypotheticals
okay. If
because
there's a case
I've
where
heard he does like
children get
hypotheticals.
by
Let me-
adults in the
let me
United States
finish.
and then get
Yeah,
pregnant.
well,
Go ahead.
Sheesh. See, yeah, okay, yeah, oh yeah, fucking sriracha. Oh no, Matt Walsh is trending with Dylan. Oh no, are we at it again? One moment, we're gonna take the off ramp really quickly. Why is this trending again? What the fuck is this? Transgender was invented by pedophilic psychologists, degenerate quacks, and lunatic sexologists, literal Nazi scientists, and other assorted deviants. A collection of the most despicable monsters imaginable came up with it. Dude, this dude lives in a fucking fantasy world. Oh man. Did he like show up to some, named a bunch of Jewish doctors as being pedophiles and Nazis who invented trans people? The idea that like trans people only just started existing is now straight up doing. Wait, what is, oh no, what is this? Transgender? Yeah, I saw that. Let's go with this convo. Yeah, we will, absolutely. Magnus Hirschfeld. I think I have to like say it with that accent, right? Magnus Hirschfeld was born into a large Jewish family in 1868. German city of Cottbus, present-day Polish city of Kotzebue. Fuck, I can't read that. He studied medicine and became a doctor in 1892. Hey, that's 100 years before I was born. Hirschfeld's early work was as a physician. Okay, I'm bored. I'm kind of bored. Can I get German? Okay, cool. Key facts. Famous doctor, helped pioneer study of sexuality and gender in late 1800s, early. Gotcha. Believes in the natural diversity of sexual and gender identities is radically different from the traditional views of sexuality and fixed gender roles that were widespread at the time. Wait. The Nazis don't believe in a wait. The Nazis don't believe in natural diversity of sexual and gender identities. They're rigidly, okay. In May of 33rd, Nazis looted his institution of sexual science and destroyed much of the archives. Oh, wait. So is what there is an he was targeted by the Nazis. Fucking read, oh my god. Okay. I should have known he can't read. Okay, we're done with this. All right, let's take a look. Let's see some time codes. What do we got? Okay. Oh yeah, let's see here. Looking at January 6th, it's not about morality, it's about facts. If you truly thought that the nation was being stolen by a corrupt bureaucrats, then storming the Capitol would be an act of bravery, an act of national obligation. But since most people think they were wrong about the steal, then that's why we oppose it. Well, yeah, they were incorrect. You can Smaggle, what you have to understand is if we went with like, so there in terms of law, there is like intent. It's why we have a difference between like I think it's actual like murder and manslaughter is because there's like intent tied to that. But like what the January 6ers were doing, like they were already under the belief that like all this stuff was happening, which was all bullshit and all lies. And then they broke the law to do so. And if they were right, they would have led an illegal revolution. And if they were wrong, they still were leading an illegal revolution. Like either way, they were on the wrong side of the law. The difference is that like we live in actual reality and they live in like Earth 825 or whatever the fuck. Women respect the strong, so I must train to be. Let's see. Pro-life, let's go. Yeah, we'll do that. Millions of dollars. I read that women respect the strong, so I must train to beat my crush in a wrestling match for her hand. I believe you have to beat her father. Isn't that usually the thing? You have to grapple with their father. Pro-life, but that one pro-life woman was super hot and she dated me. Oh my goodness. Down there in the Nazi book burnings at 33. It's more than 20,000 books. Jesus. Let's see. Start at the top. Maybe let's start with everyone's original stances.
Pro-life, or in your case, pro-abortion or anti-abortion. What is your basic stance on abortion?
My basic stance.
What the fuck? What is this other thing? A, what is this little green thing? B, and C, where do I get the 90s cups? I want those.
Is we try to figure out what is a person, what makes a person. Person is granted some positive, some negative rights by governments, and probably morally
never met him, but I'll take your word for it.
We also grant people some type of right. I don't believe that a person is a collection of cells. I don't believe that a person is just a body with a brain. I think that very specifically when we speak about a person, we speak about something that has the capacity to deploy a conscious experience, because that tends to be the thing that we're usually talking about when we're figuring out if somebody's alive or dead, or whether or not somebody ought to be protected. When we say a person, when we say who is suffering, we don't say what is suffering. We're not talking about a body. We're not talking about a heartbeat. We're talking about a person having an experience. So when I try to think of abortion, I try to think of who is being harmed. I would say that before 20 to 24 weeks, that's about when the scientists say that the brain has all the parts necessary to begin communicating, to have a conscious experience, that about at that point, there is some experience there that we can speak of as a who or as a person. But prior to that, the first trimester, that really experience is not happening yet. So if you want to have an abortion, there is no who that's being harmed. There's just a what, which is whatever the body is up to that point. So generally, I'm pro-choice in first abortion up until that conscious experience has been formed, because I think that's what's worth protecting, because that's when we look to see when somebody's dead. So that's what we should look to see when somebody's alive.
So are you...
Okay, so that's basically my stance, I would say. Because we already have, like, the problem with the repeal of Roe v. Wade is it flattened, or at least my issue with it, is it was a flattening of the standard of care, because, like, what is viable at 1 week is not the same thing as what is viable at 26. And to say that there's harm created equally in both those scenarios, to me is, I don't believe that. I don't believe that whatsoever. Certainly there is a point in which we recognize that a human life has begun, even if birth hasn't necessarily happened. But that means there's also a point in which we are pre that point, that threshold being passed.
You anti-abortion after 20 or 24 weeks?
Yeah, after 20 to 24 weeks.
And all abortions, anti-all abortions.
I always forget how insufferable
with
Kristen Hawkins
the obvious exceptions of like ectopic pregnancies or life of the mother or something like that being threatened. Yeah, easy. Yeah, of course.
I mean, considering ectopic pregnancies are literally life-threatening, like, yeah, that women should not be forced to almost die for a birth that almost certainly won't produce a life, like an actual life. So,
and your positions on...
So we share a position, but Kristen, I'm sure will have her way she wants to describe it. I think that all humans have human rights. By nature of being a human, you are a member of the human family, and so any member of the human family, and this is actually the preamble of the Declaration on Universal Human Rights by the United Nations. So for those that think they have any authority, I don't know if you do, Detsiny, they say that all members of the human family deserve to be protected and treated by the law as persons. And so if you're a member of the human family, you have human rights, and we know when you become a member of the human family, it's at the moment of fertilization. It's very clear, a single cell embryo comes into existence. And so I believe human rights for all humans, and I also want to build a society of love and justice, and the way to do that is to treat people equally under the law and to protect the most vulnerable, especially children. Children deserve more protection actually than adults because they are defenseless, and so we should actually go out of our way to do what we can to.
In mine, I have the speech of Simone Veil at the Assemblée Nationale in '74, and verify the amount of weeks here in France. Is that the 14 weeks? Is that like you guys can have an abortion until 14 weeks? That's actually lower. Well, that's lower than the old standard in the U.S., but that's cool.
Protect children and never commit homicide against them. So that's my pro-life position.
Cool.
I definitely think the line is like, the line's really malleable, and I have no problem with like, no, actually, no. I was going to say I don't really have a problem with like, with communities kind of deciding where that line is, but to me at least, I don't know if there should really be a legal like threshold per se, or at least like a hard legal threshold. What we had with Roe v. Wade, I think, was adequate because it allowed like doctors and their patients make as many informed decisions as they could up until the point of, up until there was like a hard cutoff that I think was around like the 20 to 24 weeks. But I don't think passing laws to like mandate that is helpful or pragmatic, because once you erect those barriers, then like doctors and patients have to live within those, even if they are not what's medically best, I suppose.
This position, I'm against the strong being able to choose whether or not the weak or the vulnerable get to live or die based on someone else's perception of them or their convenience factor to another person. I think that's a very slippery slope,
really?
and I actually think the position
Unsatiable.
you represented
I'm gonna have to
is a
boot
very
you.
dangerous one, because what
Unless
you're
you
saying
wanna
is you have
clarify
to
that
be
rape
not
babies
only a
line.
member of our species in order to be a person with rights, the very basic right to life, but you have to be a person plus. And it's a very exclusionatory class of what you're doing. You're excluding a whole group of human beings. So I guess my question is, are there other human beings you would exclude that you don't view Detsiny as persons?
Not for this debate.
Okay, okay, cool.
Here's a question. Actually.
That is true.
Let me respond to your question.
That is, yeah.
You guys say that humans are protected. Do you agree with that? That humans ought to be protected, or humans are given?
More specifically, humans have human rights. So
Yeah,
protection can mean different
You really
things.
hate
but
humans have human rights.
The fundamental human right
can't
is
stand
the
her either.
right to
She's
not
rather
be killed.
insufferable.
Okay.
It's the right to be protected against the right to life. And so that's why I don't have the right to commit homicide against you, Destiny, or against you, Kristen, or against you, Brian, and certainly not against a preborn developing child.
Okay.
And but I have a question for you too, but I know we all have questions for each other, but I'll let you.
Sure, yeah, because I'm going to keep
go.
going on this.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you believe in that statement.
Oh, boy.
That humans
Okay.
have a right to life. So my next question would be, I show you a human who's been dead for 10 days. The corpse is still a human, we agree, right?
I think to clarify, a right to life meaning a right to not be killed, not a right not to be killed.
It's fundamentally different, abortion and end of life care. I watched one of your debates this morning when I was on the plane.
Damn, yeah, that is kind of okay, yeah.
Coming here, and I found it interesting because you kept using this end of life and argument. You fundamentally have a right not to be killed. Abortion is an active killing. It's an active dismemberment.
Yeah,
It's
that
actually
makes
a
sense,
violent
Karsten.
ending for another human being. So morally, that act of abortion is much different than someone who maybe is brain dead, or we're not sure their brain activity that's been in a hospital for 3 months. That's a much different position to take, because you're not actively
I don't know,
killing that
insatiable.
person. You may say
France has
we have
fought
to
2
withdraw
world wars
life
on their land. I think that I think that's earned them a country status. That's to verify if there is no basic issue in being sure of the thing.
support for this reason, or the doctor may say we have this reason to believe this person is brain dead, but you're not actively killing. You don't say, well, they're going to die, so I'm going to take a gun and put it through the person's head. We would not say that. We would say we might withdraw life support and see if the person can sustain life on his or her own, but we're not going to actively dismember them in the process or violently kill them in the process. But that's exactly what abortion is. It's not just easily withdrawing life support. It's actively going into a womb where there's a developing human being that biologist tells us is a unique, whole, living human being that's never existed before and will never exist again, and it's actively...
God damn, what a fucking platitude. Unique, whole, new... It's like, yeah, it's a person. Like, move on. It's not like, stop at the fucking God damn it. Ugh.
Killing them.
Fucking gross.
Okay, I don't believe that you believe in that argument. If I were to show you that all abortions could be done by just extracting the baby and then leaving it on the table and not actively killing it, but just removing it from the mother's life support and seeing what happens, would you be okay with that?
That is actively killing.
That is killing it.
Because
How is that actively killing any more than pulling the plug on
Destiny,
somebody?
you know this. You're a parent. Children are dependent on their parents. A newborn is dependent on his or her parents, and a preborn child is dependent on his or her mother.
I understand. I'm just challenging the words we're using here. The difference between active and passive killing.
But the dependency of a child doesn't give their parents or anyone else the right to kill that child.
Sure. I never said as much. I was just challenging
Well, you do say as much, I think, because I think your position is if that dependent child before the arbitrary line of 20 to 24 weeks is in any way unwanted, inconvenient, just for whatever reason abortion is chosen for that child, then you are okay with a parent killing their child.
Depends on what video games the child plays. No, the only thing I'm trying to figure out right now is
But are you okay with that? Because I think that was what you said earlier.
I don't know what. So right now I'm just trying to figure out what your position is. So
Well, we're trying to figure out your position too. So
I already get my position with crystal clear.
But it actually wasn't
a little
unclear.
unclear.
That wasn't actually clear, Destiny, because when
Okay, wait, hold on, wait, just because, hold on, wait, hold on, just because I got cut off like 7 times and I haven't responded. So just to be very clear, to give you an idea of like what I'm trying to establish right now, when I have conversations with people that are pro-life, there's a lot of dancing between words that I think deserve distinct definitions. Human, I think, is distinctly different from person. I think it's distinctly different from life. I think it's just
Okay, so this is going to be really important. I'm glad, Destiny's I cannot fault or really, I don't find a lot of faults with a lot of his debates from what I've seen, and I haven't seen that much. The dude is very good, and I like the way he's framing this because, like, the issue that a lot of people have, I think, with these sorts of like political actor type folks is they like to play around with language a lot, and they like to shift their terminology. They'll say human in one sentence, person in the next sentence. They'll constantly shift this to try to create like synonyms between words that aren't necessarily synonyms, words that describe different, unique, different phenomena. But like, if you can tie them to the same thing, if you can tie person to human, it's kind of a way that you can continually smuggle and use the same, you can launder your points a little bit better. And it's good that Destiny's trying to hammer them down and stick them to one definition for each word. Since that's going to be kind of, it seems like pretty key to his argument against why, like, a human life and a, like, being a person and personhood are different things. A heartbeat is different from a conscious being, kind of in the same way of like, if somebody's like a vegetable, there's a reason why we kind of have that term, right? Like, if somebody's brain dead, we call them a vegetable. It's not because they're not a human, but they're not really a person, because personhood is, what you experiencing, communicating in like, experiencing things, and vegetables can't do those things. They can be vegetables the same way a human can be a human, but a vegetable can't be a person unless they're Larry the cucumber or the Bob the tomato. Maybe they can, but like otherwise. No,
distinctly
stop.
different from a child. But all of these things, when we're talking pro-life, tend to just get thrown together. Like, oh, well, we should defend all human people and children are worthy of life. And a lot of these statements are almost begging the question. Obviously, anything that you would consider a child deserves rights to life, right? But that's what's
pro-lifers believe human beings are persons.
Yeah.
What you're arguing is that some human beings don't deserve personhood rights.
But what I'm trying
which
to do,
throughout history, Destiny, has always proved to be a very dangerous position that you're taking.
Yeah, I understand the analogies of slavery we're trying to draw here, but what I'm just trying to figure out is because...
But can you respond to that? Because I think let's just take it one step at a time, because
I think fundamentally there's a difference between saying a fetus hasn't developed the cognitive parts yet to recognize it as living versus saying black people and white people are different types of things.
Let's address consciousness for a minute, because my understanding is you're saying...
Okay, if you want, hold on, real quick. If you want, we can leave to mine if you want. I still have no idea what you guys believe, but we can leave for mine if you want.
Well, I'll very clear. I mean, we can say it slower for you.
What I heard you say is that like children should have rights and shouldn't be killed, which I think we all agree.
Any human life has the right to not be killed. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then you also try to draw, when you said not be killed, you try to draw a distinction between like active and passively killing.
No, you cannot.
She did. Because she said there was a difference between pulling the plug on grandpa versus actively killing.
The intentional destruction of an innocent human life is
but I was saying that like unplugging grandpa would be kind of like unplugging a baby. You're disconnecting both from a life support thing.
No, because a baby belongs, a preborn baby belongs before development of
he or
able
she's
to
right
be born belongs
in
in his or her mother's womb.
Sure, I understand, but
So
that means there's probably ways.
It's a natural habitat.
Sure, that's a fundamentally different thing. There's probably ways to passively kill children that we would agree is also wrong. Just because you're actively versus passively doing something,
well,
that's not going to be.
I think intention matters too. Yeah.
Sure, it absolutely can be. Yeah, I agree. But that's important to qualify. We can't just say like passively killing somebody is fundamentally different from actively killing somebody. Therefore, one is described like moral weight than the other.
I do kind of wish there is a guy here. He's off screen, but he's in the middle. I don't know why he's not like, at the very least, like kind of stopping people from interrupting as much. But I guess this might be a podcast where they're let off the chain a little bit.
isn't, because there's, if you starve a
Well,
child to
I
death, that's
think there's-
passive, but that's
We
also
have
I
to
think
set a
there's a
line where
few
we
other things
choose
you have to
have
get into and
something
what you
as
mean
an
by
entity
passive or
observing more
active.
Sure, I agree. That's what I'm trying to get into.
Okay.
But you can ask me a question if you want. I'll just
Okay,
pause
I
you.
do have a
Yeah,
question
go ahead.
about consciousness,
Yeah, go for
because
it.
my understanding is that's your big line. That if there's suddenly consciousness, then they are a person. They're not just a human, but they're also a person. And first, to clarify, you think it's okay for some humans to be the victims of homicide? You think it's
Okay, Smaggle. So, I certainly agree that there's so any line that we draw is going to be arbitrary. Everyone needs to understand that in terms of abortion, when we draw a line in terms of what is and what isn't a legal abortion, that is going to be an arbitrary line that we have chosen based on whatever criteria we pick. Now, the question of what criteria do we use is basically what this entire debate is going to be about. These two believe that the mere existence of a fetus, of enough clump of a cells to create some little dolphin looking thing, is enough of an argument of nope. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're also pro more of life begins at conception folks, right? Now that's an arbitrary line that they've picked. That's the one that they enjoy. The one that I support is generally the one we had under Roe v. Wade. I believe it was 20 to 24 weeks. That's when that's when our understanding of fetal development says that there begins to be, unique experiences, all the rest of that sort of stuff. Up until that point, it's mostly kind of up in the air as to if that fetus, if that developing child, if it was extracted from the mother, would continue on. There's no guarantee that it will. There's no guarantee that it won't. So the question, at least for me, is always all right, if we're going to draw this arbitrary line, how do we draw it to benefit the most amount of people? To me, we already had that. We already had a system in place. We already had a pretty, I think, fair standard that after a point, abortion wasn't an option. Before a point, it is an option. And it needs to be open as an option for people in a certain threshold of or a time period so that they can make proper decisions. Because if you get pregnant due to rape, carve outs for rape and incest exceptions, as a good example, are, what's the word I'm looking for? Insufficient, for the simple fact that if you are raped by a person and then want to proceed with an abortion, that doctor, even if there are rape exceptions, that doctor's going to look at you and go, if I do this and there isn't a legal conviction, I could lose my license or I could go to jail. Meaning you won't have access to that abortion until the legal system is done with your rape case, which could take much longer than the amount of time than it would take for the baby to gestate and eventually be born. Meaning we would leave mothers with an inability to make a decision on that exception in the amount of time that's necessary for there to be a real world impact. So rape and incest exceptions to me are not they're bullshit. They're fairy dust. They're nothing. They don't mean anything. They're inactionable. You're not able to get through the legal system quick enough, or at least not reliably quick enough, unfortunately. And the reason why people defended Roe v. Wade and the reason why the repeal of Roe v. Wade was such a disaster in a lot of people's minds is we took a standard that we already kind of had and already was pretty much working for everybody for the most part. If you didn't want to get an abortion, you weren't forced to. If you did, you had a window in which you could get that. But these people want to go to a world where people have less options in more desperate positions. Unfortunately, it's just, to me, it's just so much less it's less about healthcare and it's more about just these two's personal politics. What is good for the mother isn't always what these two are going to like, but it's not their body and it's not their healthcare. I don't think they should have a say in that.
it's okay to commit homicide against a human, just not a person.
I mean, I would take issue with homicide because that's a really loaded term, but I would say that you can end the life of human beings that no longer have the capacity to deploy consciousness. And
So
we
if
do
I'm
that.
asleep
Let me
and I'm
finish real quick.
unconscious, it's okay to kill me?
That's why I said capacity to deploy consciousness. I can wake you up when you're sleeping.
Like the fetus has capacity.
No, a
The
fetus that
fetus-
doesn't have the necessary brain parts has no
Destiny,
capacity for consciousness.
If you give that child time, that child
Give the
innately
child time
has
implies-
capacity.
Wait, you said 20 to 24 weeks. What about children?
Hold on.
Who
Wait,
have
wait,
REM,
wait, wait, wait.
Who have REM
Just you
cycle
saying,
sleep
hold on,
at
wait,
18
wait,
weeks.
wait, wait. Just what you said there. Give the child time implies that it's
Give
not
me time
there
to
yet.
wake up.
Do you think that a seed and a tree are the same thing?
You're making a wrong equivalency.
I'm
here.
not making a wrong
No,
equivalency.
you are,
I'm saying that a
Destiny.
seed
Because
given enough
listen,
time, a seed given enough
Destiny.
time will grow into a tree. But when you use the word, this thing will become this thing. The implication there is your intuition pumping all the rights that this thing has for saying this will become
Incorrect.
this.
Incorrect. A child in the womb, a human being, has
Yeah.
the capacity for consciousness.
No, it
They
doesn't.
might not have developed that
So-
capacity.
That means they don't have the
yet.
capacity
They might not
for
have
it.
developed that
Just
capacity yet.
one microphone at a time, please.
yeah.
Just let everyone finish.
They might
now
not
he
have
jumps in.
developed the capacity yet. Similarly, if someone is in a coma or unconscious, they're not actively, that capacity is not activated yet. But if you don't interrupt the life of that child, if you don't kill that child will absolutely be conscious and just develop consciousness in just a few weeks.
And that's the difference between the question you were asking me earlier when you tried to trip me up about the
I'm
end
not trying
of
to
life.
You guys are the ones trying to trip me up.
No,
I'm trying to
we're
take those
trying to
what you're.
clarify. You have a very murky position because you said between 20 to 24 weeks. I believe
That
the
is a
child has
window.
rights. Which one is it? If you're the one making the laws,
Sure,
and who gives you the
All right, let's also talk about this. Do you remember when I said how in terms of like the way we write laws from a racial perspective, they're very opaque? The same goes for abortion laws. In terms of racial laws, it's actually a detriment because it allows for space. It allows space for, again, I mentioned Jim Crow laws in the example. It allows space for people to kind of play around with language, be vague, be unspecific, to write people out of the franchisement of their rights. That's how Jim Crow laws work. That is a bad consequence of having kind of opaque laws. But on the other hand, opaque laws aren't always bad. Another, like in terms of abortion, as an example, also kind of opaque. And we leave that opaque because we leave the decision up to doctors and their patients, whatever might be useful or I guess most pragmatic for them. Some people, they might need to get an abortion early because they have some, I don't know, developmental issue with the fetus. And, you know, that parent isn't either A, equipped, or B, does not want to put the child through a difficult life if they have like, you know, some kind of awful deformity. And I think that should be left up to the doctors and the parents and the families to make that decision. I don't think that's Kristen Hawkins' place to decide for other people. And I don't think that's the state's right to be meddling in other people's family creation. So like the opaqueness of like the Roe v. Wade decision helped in giving that space to doctors and everybody make that decision for themselves. Because once you erect strong, like I said this earlier, once you erect strong barriers, hard barriers, you're going to see a reduction in healthcare. You're like people just simply don't want to get in trouble for performing an abortion that could be the right thing to do, but we don't know yet.
the right to make those
Crystal
laws.
clear position. My position is the thing we ought to defend is the conscious experience because that's the thing we look
When
to.
does that conscious experience begin?
About
here?
20 to 24 weeks.
Well, that's a big time period because there's been children who've been born at 21 weeks and 5 days.
Oh, no, not
so
MAGA
were those children when they were
communism.
born prematurely? So I had an intern a few years ago who was one of the youngest children
Nice
ever
to
to
say,
survive.
Okay.
At that age, she was 21 weeks and 6 days.
Oh my
old.
God, so much.
So she's
so much
right in between
Vache.
your 20 to 24 week.
People
time
are
range.
very,
So
very
when she and her twin sister
have very
were
strong
born,
opinions on
do
Vache.
you believe that the hospital, the NICU, did something wrong and giving out care and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in care to sustain her and her sister's life?
Why would I think something wrong was done there?
Well, because
you don't think it's a human with consciousness necessarily.
Yeah,
You're
I don't
not
think
sure.
a
Your argument
2-week-old
trying
is
to
a
kill
human
them.
with consciousness, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with supporting it.
But you're saying it's okay to kill it.
So you're saying my
Kill him or
vagina is
her.
magical. So something happened.
No, first of all, as a
and-
child born by
A rerun? Sir, I'm syndicated. I'm not a rerun. Also, what does that even mean? Here's what people are thinking about today's decision. I already covered that. Maybe you should have been here a couple hours ago when I covered that story already.
C-section, I'm very offended. Okay,
But
we're humans too.
that's the
Number one,
position you're
no,
taking.
hold on.
Jesus.
Is it
Hold on.
something-
Wait,
something magical
hold on.
happens
Wait.
during birth?
The vagina magic
Supreme Court ruled on affirmative action, which I spent like an hour. I spent over an hour on. So don't you tell me 007 Goofy that we aren't covering things on Supreme Court decisions today.
Guy is not in the room right now. I didn't give any qualification about birth being the magical time that made somebody
you are
human.
welcome
Never
to go
said
hear my
that
arguments.
ever. I have no idea what position you're attacking
stream.
there. To back up, very
You should have been
your
here.
position that's
You
not
should
clear,
follow.
because you said
That's
20
what
to
you
24 weeks,
should
and I'm
follow.
asking
Then
you
you
a
won't
very
miss when I
direct
talk
question
about stuff.
about child born at
Your
21
question was
weeks
if a child
and
is
6
prematurely born
days.
at 16 weeks, the mother and the father have every right to try to find support for that child. Why would you not?
But why? What makes that
Why?
child
Because it's going to grow
worthy
into their kid. Why would they not?
Of care.
But you're saying it's okay to kill the kid at 16 weeks.
Sure.
And I think that's the difference between this side of the table and that side of the table.
Well, obviously, that's because I'm pro-choice and you guys are
right. But you're
pro-abortion and you're
pro-abortion.
anti-abortion.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered that you could be wrong on this issue?
Yeah, of course.
What,
Have you?
Absolutely.
Hold on. To be clear, only one side of the table here is tied to organizations that are getting money invested in them. So if any side here was
I started my argument.
I understand, but
fair.
you're never changing your position. I'm still free to change mine. So in terms of asking me if I consider
That's
I'm
why I'm
wrong,
asking.
I can consider
true.
that I'm wrong. You guys will never change your opinion on this. but go ahead.
I've considered it. I've had to consider a lot of times. But
What would it mean has she
on your position on abortion?
What would
Morally,
it mean if
what
I
would
was
it mean?
wrong?
So
Well, okay, let's we watched that really short clip, but let's address that a little bit. If Destiny is wrong, and if I'm wrong, if my position is, which is pretty much virtually the same one as his, that there's a threshold in which we cut off access to abortion because unless there's something extreme going on, then what's the harm? What's the tangible harm that's been created in society? And any of you, and I see some of you are a little bit more on the pro-life side. I'm kind of interested in your answer to that. What is the tangible, real life harm if we have a threshold where you can get an abortion for a length of time and then you can't unless an extreme circumstance past a certain point? I'm in a veil. Well, you're also French, so okay. And you guys chime in while I go get a refill on water, because goddamn, I am thirsty. Respect that. Okay, with killing babies. I will address that when I get back. Let's see. I can at least have respect when you own that you are okay. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I can at least have respect when you own that you are okay with killing babies. I mean, we used to have human sacrifice in religions. We did. We used to rip people's fucking hearts out at the top of tombs or fucking pyramids. It's pretty badass. It's all a morality debate anyway. Okay, so if you would like, so here's my only pushback on that. I still don't really see the what's the harm? I get it, the whole you think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, you think that it is a baby at conception, which is fine. If that's what you believe, I have no problem with that. But I need to know what the antithesis is, what the great harm to society is when not everybody has that same conception. Because we've had Roe v. Wade since what? I think the mid 70s. I could be wrong. I don't remember when Roe v. Wade was decided, but I believe it was somewhere in the 70s. But what's the oh, this thing about society has gotten worse because of abortion and because of freer access to it. Not 100% free, but freer access to it. I do not like these pro or anti-abortion debates, nor do I really discuss them or talk about them at all. Even maybe I should start learning and taking some kind of idea, but I mainly go on economic and political issues. I do not like discussing id poll as well, but I do think some cases it's pretty important. I'm not a big fan of like identity politics. What one has to recognize, I think, a lot of times is the usefulness of intersectionality, because the only time I find identity politics, I suppose, useful is in an analysis of like class issues and how those intersect with like race, especially in the United States. We in the United States have a really, really like unique issue when it comes to how diverse we are and how segregated our racial makeup is along class lines. There's a deep like history of that, and understanding how those two kind of fit together is, I think, really important and valuable. Public health issues, yeah, and public health is important. The harm is the termination of a living being. Maybe that termination holds low value because it doesn't have conscious experience. Maybe it doesn't have preferences. So maybe the harm is minimal, but the harm is not non-existent. It is still terminating a life. That's all the harm. Okay, so I think that's an honest analysis of it. And I do think, like, when people go through abortions, it's not traumatizing. It's like it's a traumatizing process. It's not fun. If you've ever spoken to somebody, and if you've spoken to somebody who's had a child before, I almost guarantee you there's a good chance they'd had an abortion before that. I think the highest like rate of people who have children are also people who have had abortions previously. It's just things kind of happen in abortion. Not every abortion is as simple as, the sperm goes up into the thing and then the thing and then and you get fat and then it comes out. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. And like it's a process that I think every individual is going to have their own like story, their own experience with. And the problem with passing these laws is it's a one size fit all medical tract for pretty much everybody, but not everybody has a one track like medical diagnosis, or I guess a medical what's the word, like process for this sort of thing. Like it's just not like we can agree that like is it a living being? I suppose I would disagree, because I don't think a living being really counts as something that is 100% dependent on another being for its existence. But even then that's like kind of a bit of a gray area. And also the consciousness part is kind of something that to me also kind of disqualifies fetuses from what I would count as personhood. But like, we can agree that there's harm, but the harm is external. The harm is to the mother. The harm is to the relationship of the two people who were maybe trying to have kids, or maybe, want kids in the future, but have to reject this one because they're just not in a position to take care of it yet. That's really difficult and hard on the relationship. Same with rape, same with incest, same with any of these other situations. And we need to have laws that are like, I think, like loose and fluid enough to fit those needs. And unfortunately, these people don't want that. And that's where my opposition comes. Still life at conception. And the question is when or if you should be able to end that life. I just feel it's disingenuous. One, if you're arguing when life occurs, then you agree that life is important and murder is wrong. Well, we already agree on that, obviously. Two, if you can admit it's the life, but then want to debate when life has value, then we can have an honest debate. Well, it's not about value, I think. I don't really know if it's value that I would turn to it. I think it would be... let me think about this. Would it be... I don't know if value is the word I would put to it, because it's not always the problem with like abortion and with what's the word I'm looking for? The problem with like abortion and the debate around it is like, I think there's like this idea of like you mentioned value, right? And I don't think it's like a value thing, because a lot of people don't have kids because kids are valuable. I don't think that's why people have children. People have children for any number of reasons. Sometimes it's because they want kids, because they do see a value in it. They do see a positive value in them. Sometimes people just have kids because they don't have it, like they just got pregnant. They just got pregnant. That was it. It was never a choice. And like the harm of not allowing people who it like didn't make that decision to get pregnant, I don't think is helpful to society. What you're gonna see is a lot more people go through a harder life because now they're taking care of a child that they weren't prepared for, didn't initially want, and not only that, incurring like forcing medical payments onto them also isn't something that I think the government should be involved in or have the ability to force you to do necessarily, just arbitrarily, I suppose. We have 2 minutes left, and we want to debate the device of value. Then we can. Okay, let's see. I believe that there should be an integration of IDPOL into classism because there is needed mutual movement. I believe that the class dictates our human society and has done so since slave society. So IDPOL should not be put at the expense of class. Absolutely not. They work hand in hand, but I do think class will always outlive, or at least I like to believe that class will outlive race. When we finally get over racism, we will, I think, embrace a lot more classism and an understanding of class struggles. But it's united in their movement of liberation to oppress class. Fucking base. Color as. That's what said Vale in her speech. The great value. If you're not vegan, you hold some life above others. Yeah. I'm definitely not a vegan, so I suppose that is true. Expensive too. Yeah, fuck yeah, it is. It is value. Does the mother or baby have more worth? Does society or the baby have more value? Well, if you want to make a mother or baby having more worth argument, then it would be the mother, because the mother can create more life. Baby cannot. Not only that, but we're not talking about a baby. We are still talking about a fetus. If you want to start from clump of cells and like fetal development, you have to argue all the way back from that point, which I don't think societally fetuses contribute equally to adult women. 49% of the time are about value. People throw out life of the mother, but even that is a value judgment. Yeah, it is. I side more with the mother. There'll be a destruction of the social constructs of gender, race, etc. God, I hope so. Sadly, I don't think the destruction of those structures will be in my time, but you know, I do my part to see to the end of it. Anyway, let's continue.
I don't know if you believe in God.
At Insatiable's expense.
But say you get hit by a bus and you go to heaven, and God's like,
Jesus Christ,
you've been completely wrong on abortion your entire life. You've advocated for abortions between 20 and 24 weeks. No one can really tell because you wouldn't give us a definitive time.
Goofy, what is life? Give me a definition of life, then.
You're hold on, wait. I'm sorry, I gotta go this real quick.
Like, what would that mean if you were wrong on abortion?
Hold on. For you saying that just because I can't nail an exact solid time, when
that's kind of a big deal.
It's not really that big of a deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
There's
You're
a
making
line
laws.
between
It's
there's a
super
line
not a big
between
deal.
homicide
You could literally
and
just
being
say
totally
like,
okay.
hey, before 20 weeks, abortion is okay, and then draw the cutoff right there if you want. That's a question for policymakers.
But why do policymakers? Why does anyone get to decide whether or not an innocent person lives or dies?
Wait, you fucking idiot. That's what you're arguing. Wait. This idiot on the fucking left doesn't understand that what she's arguing is for lawmakers to be involved and to decide these thresholds. That is the reality. Like, the argument isn't, we don't make these arguments. These people are so stupid. We don't have these arguments because, like, you know, oh, we just like talking about this stuff. While I like talking about it and debating it, that's not why I talk about and debate any of it. I talk about and debate all of it so that I can propagate my opinions and get people to kind of move over more to my position, or at the very least come to an understanding of my position. And maybe one day they move over to mine. But the main goal is to garner support for a much more vague understanding, or at the very least vague interpretation of when fetuses are, ineligible for abortion, because I think it should be kind of a bit vague, because not all pregnancies play out the exact same. Detsiny said 20 weeks, but a doctor could do your little ultrasound thingamajig, whatever the fuck, at 20 weeks and go, actually, that's not developed up to this point. Your baby is maybe premature, maybe is gestating a little bit slower. Like the gestation of like children, of like the next living being that's in your like womb, is not a hard science. Like it is, in the sense of like we have like what's the word? We have like averages, and that's how you write policy, but you still need to leave room in those averages so that people can fall out of those cracks when they need to. Like that's kind of what you need it for.
Because that's what policymakers do.
No, they don't have the right to kill an innocent person. If any policymaker tries to kill an innocent person,
about
that's
healthcare
murder.
and triage and who gets medical treatment first, or if you're making decisions about saving
can't
people
you
from...
admit there's a...
Okay, hold on. Wait. Okay. Just be clear. I'm going to start cutting people.
Okay. Goofy, thank you for that. Now, can you tell me how a fetus is, power of adaptation and environment through changes originating internally? Like, how does that, okay, so how does that apply to like a fetus? Like, how does the definition that you just gave me, like, apply, like, what is the, like, oh, a fetus does this, and this is how it's doing, like, life. This is how it's performing life.
Wait. I know, but I don't have a chance to answer any question, and you're like loading so many horribly like intuition pump question bags in front of me that I don't have time to answer all of the horrible questions in front of me. Okay? No, I'm gonna keep talking. We're gonna do one at a time. I will answer a question, but you can't keep stacking like dumb questions in front of me and they'll be like, oh, see, like you want to murder children, okay?
I don't know about dumb.
If you want me to answer, hold on. So let me address the very first thing, because you keep trying to draw like there's some like thing here that you've caught me on, the idea that I can't give you a concrete time between 20 to 24 weeks. Okay? Yeah. I hate to be the guy that does this in a debate.
Well, I'm really just asking because like
or a Nirvana fallacy. The idea that
just like Destiny, like I notice people like to use words kind of loosely, so that's why I asked that question. And in terms of like, is it used to dehumanize? Not really. Although there is an element to that. I can certainly agree there's an element to that. That me saying fetus distinguishes a fetus from a baby, because I do think that those are distinctly different things. An infant, a newborn, to me is wildly different from a fetus. Absolutely. So it's not really dehumanization. It's a distinction that I'm drawing.
Just because I can't point exactly at when something begins, that I have to say that all of it is the same, or I can't point to that thing existing at all. I can't tell you when individual pieces of sand are stacked up and eventually become a pile of sand. I can't give you the exact numbers of sand that
Also, keep in mind, Goofy, the question is not at what point do we begin. So, like, what I care about is legislation. I care about the structures that we build around the way that we perform our lives, right? If a person, like any mother, values their child at like 1 week of gestation. Sorry. I had a burp, but I held it in for you. But like any mother, like whether the baby is 28 weeks, I don't know how many, 40 weeks, 28 weeks. I don't know how long it takes for week wise. I just know it's 9 months. Whether it's 28 weeks, whether it's 20 weeks, whether it's 16 weeks, whether it's 10 weeks, whether it's 2 weeks, whether it's 1 week. A mother who wants that child, who like wanted to get pregnant, that child has value the second they're done. Like the second their husband. I worked with like an old coworker of mine. She was trying to get pregnant with her second kid while I was like during the time that I worked with them. And like she would tell us like stories about how hard they would try and all the ridiculous nonsense that she would do because she read some article on the internet about like, do this after your husband fucking comes inside you and it'll like increase the fucking do a handstand right after he's done busting a nut in you, and that'll like get the sperm going, that'll like the gravity will like fucking Mario Kart boost them all the way through the fallopian tubes and all the rest of that shit. Like people value like kids at like even before conception for a lot of people. So like I don't think it's a when we value, because we, you and me and everybody else is going to value that existence at a different time. There are people who go through like pregnancies, have their kids, and like they don't feel like this connection. I forget what the term is. It's like a medical term. It's like a mental thing where like the baby's born and they feel this weird disconnect. And like, even though they shouldn't, like they want to feel more connected, but they don't. And it's mainly because they haven't imprinted on them postpartum. Thank you. But yeah, and there's like that sort of thing. So like the way people value like their pregnancy process and like the fetus and then, you know, the infant and all the rest of that stuff really isn't like this straight line. It's this like wave. Like how many women like in the middle of their pregnancies are like, fuck this. Why did I do this to myself? Why did I agree to this? I feel like shit. My hips hurt. My fucking back hurts. My fucking shoulders hurt. I'm hungry all the time. I'm sweaty all the time. Like what people value is rather like fluid, I think. But like what isn't, or at least the metric in which I think we should build the structure is mostly database. I just want something that will fit most people, and for the people who doesn't, they can kind of fall between the cracks, and you know, that's perfectly fine too. Like that to me is kind of where I care about it, where the discussion to me is valuable, because the morality of this or that is like it's all well and good, but I care about legislation and I care about the actual legal ramifications, the real life consequences of this stuff. And what it has led to in a lot of states is people not having access to abortion, and because of that, going through like, you know, they got to go to other states, or, you know, they can't go to their normal doctors, and now they've got to, you know, kind of figure out another doctor in another state, or, you know, maybe they have like a complication, but doctors need to wait until their life is threatened, because in the laws that legislators write, they write out a carve out that's like, oh, you can't do an abortion unless the life of the mother is at risk. So when women go in some of these states to get their like pregnancy checked out and there's something wrong, doctors will turn them away and say, okay, we need your life to be just a bit more in danger so that we can say legally your life was threatened, and now we can do, you know, whatever procedure we need to do. Like that happens, and that's the harm I want to avoid. That's the overall harm I want to avoid. And the way we get that is through irresponsible legislation, in my opinion. Okay. Let me read these. Absolutely, but the biggest dehumanization term is not saying it's a life. That is fair. I don't want to say it's not a life. That is fair. If I said that, then I retract that. But I did want a definition of life just so we were on the same page. U.S. laws, I don't understand why they set the limit to 24 weeks, as the body is really advanced for the fetus, which is almost a baby. As far as I know, I think it's 20. So before, each state had kind of their own, you know, they had their own thresholds with an overall, I think, federal limit of 20 to 26 weeks is what I'd always known. Detsiny said 20 to 24. I've always heard 20 to 26. But the only reason why it's like that, you know, 4 week window is mainly because, again, as I mentioned earlier, not all pregnancies like progress, you know, equally or in a consistent manner. So you need that wiggle room if there's premature, if the babies are prematurely developing, or if they're slowly maturing, whatever the other version of that, whatever the antithesis to that word is. If you just evaluate societal worth, then an adult person is way more cost efficient than a newborn's. On balance, and pregnant women's matter is way better. But in order to arrive at this analysis, you have to disregard the inherent value of the fetus. That's fine, but we're at the point of the conversation. But the value of the fetus is the entire point we're arguing about. Yeah, I just don't think the value of any fetus or any pregnancy is like a straight line. I pretty much said all of that like kind of as I was thinking about it. So I think I explained that in a good way. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I try not to use straw men. In France, under Macron's presidency, as the access to specialists is complex nowadays, they pushed for a second time limit at the origin 10. Under Chirac, it was 12, and then now 14. Interesting. Also, keep in mind, I also think in terms of France's abortion procedures also, I do think it's a bit different. It's a different context just because of the economics there, because you guys have a pretty robust healthcare system, whereas we don't. So a lot of the reasoning behind a lot of people's pregnancies, like if if I was in a position right now where me and my significant other were pregnant, we would have to get an abortion just because we can't afford to we can't afford to provide for that. And that's like, I don't want to I want to be able to provide for my kids. So for me, like, that's like that's like, from what I understand, one of the largest and one of the most like frequently referenced what's the word, justifications for seeking an abortion is just because it's so fucking expensive in this country. We do nothing to support people. If we really want to see a reduction in abortions, you need to pay people to have kids. That's what we should be doing. Habitual makes doctors scared. All the states, as far as I've seen, have a health clause. So it's not really okay. So I would look into this. Let me see if I have some links, I'll try to post them. But like, what you're gonna hear is, because you have to keep in mind, like, laws, once you write laws in very specific language, doctors, and I said this earlier with the rape case, like, if a doctor doesn't know, like, they're not a legal scholar, you come in and say you want an abortion, you got raped. Well, if that doctor gets sued by the state or some organization, some anti-abortion organization, they say, hey, that person was not raped, you performed an abortion under the lie of a rape exception, that doctor is going to get in a lot of trouble, and is going to get in a lot of trouble for not verifying that. But how's the only way you verify that? Under the legal system, under the way that we construct the laws, there has to be a legal threshold of, okay, this person is convicted of rape. We have proved within a reasonable doubt, without a reasonable doubt that this person committed this crime. You are now the doctor has 100% assurance that when he does that abortion, he has legal protection, that he is adhering to the rape and incest exception, and not operating under the assumption that it was the reporting that this person was raped, it was like honest, not just taking your patient's word at it. And I tend to think that it should be that doctors and that's how you kind of do it, right? That's you get the doctors to go, ooh, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to lose my license. I don't want to, run afoul of the law. And then you have clinics closing. There's a bunch of clinics that have to close, in a few southern states because they just can't operate under those kinds of laws. And especially if laws are just set up to incentivize that kind of legal action from organizations like the one that Kristen Stewart runs. Legal conditions set under Vail's law to help a bit to understand. If you could link those, that'd be cool. Sure, but 1, hospitals have lawyers, and 2, current thresholds are very broad. Not in every state and not consistently. Hospitals do have lawyers, but any lawyer will tell you, like, if you're a hospital lawyer, any lawyer will tell you, because they're in the business of making money, if a rape victim comes in and wants to get an abortion, and there's a law in the books that says no abortions before or after 6 weeks, because I think that's the Texas law. After 6 weeks, the only exceptions are rape, incest, or the life of the mother. That means when rape victim number 1 comes in, they want an abortion, but they got raped, a month ago or something, and like they're past the 6-week line, that lawyer's going to tell them, sorry, no room at the inn, Virgin Mary, you're on your own. And they're going to tell the doctor, no, you can't do it. You work here. We're not going to let you use our facility, because the law is written in a very simple and pretty straightforward way. Yeah, you can, Carson.
I can see.
Let me see if I can find. Okay, let's see. Texas. Let's see if I can find Texas's specific language. Let's see. Texas abortion. I want the raw law. If you're only allowed to give abortions due to rape, incest, life of the mother, then you lose out on 99% of abortions. Wait. If you only allowed to give abortions due to rape, incest, and life of the mother, then you lose out on 99%. Can you word that differently? My brain is not, I don't quite. You're allowed to give abortions due to rape, incest, then you lose. What do you mean you lose out on 99% of abortions? I'm sorry. I just don't. Because keep in mind, you have to prove rape, you have to prove incest, and you have to prove that the life of the mother is in danger. Or at the very least, it depends on the language. Because if it's imminent threat, like the term imminent threat from a legal standpoint would be the mother is like about to die, now you can do the abortion. History of abortion laws. No, I just want, what is okay, let's go with this one. Okay. Texas abortion. Okay, can I just want the language. I just want exactly the language. Dobbs v. Jackson. No, okay. What is the Texas law that punishes people who perform? Oh, here it is. Yeah. There are a number of laws on the books that penalize abortion. Some are new, such as the heartbeat and trigger law, and some have been in place for some time. Here's an overview. Texas Code is commonly called the heartbeat law. This statute states that a, quote, a physician may not knowingly perform or induce an abortion on a pregnant woman unless the physician has determined, in accordance with this section, whether the woman's unborn child has a detectable fetal heartbeat. Well, yeah, because if they can't like perform services, then they can't make money, and if they can't make money, they can't pay the rent for the buildings. If they can't pay for the rent for the buildings, that abortion clinic is now gone in whatever locality. It's a way of targeting their economics and pushing them out of the region. Health and safety code. All healthcare is privatized, sadly, except for the VA, I guess. Sets out a penalty for doctors who perform an abortion without providing a sonogram, having the mother listen to the heart, Jesus, and providing certain written and verbal explanations as a misdemeanor punishable by fine up to $10,000. So if you're a doctor and you want to perform an abortion, you have to prove you've done all of this, or you get a misdemeanor and $10,000. If you're a doctor, you just won't do it because you don't want to risk $10,000. Let's see. Make it state jail felony for a person who intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly cause a drug-induced abortion, meaning if somebody does a bunch of drugs, then they also get a felony. Lovely. Jail felony to perform partial birth abortion and perform a dismemberment abortion, which are really just different forms of abortions. While they sound like awful, and they are awful experiences, they are at the end of the day healthcare. I want the plain reading, though. I just want the text of the law. ER is not free. And then other taxes. Privatization versus mutualism. Yeah, really. In France, it's not a business, but a public healthcare service. God, I wish. Can I just get text? Can I get the plain text? I just want, here it is. Prohibits abortion. Here we go. Is this it? .gov. Cool. All right. Let's take a look. Subchapter. Fetal heartbeat means cardiac activity or the steady and repetitive rhythmic contraction of the fetal heart within the gestational. Okay, I thought that was a Q. Gestational sect. Okay. Gestational age means the amount of time that has elapsed from the first day of the woman's last menstrual period. Keep in mind, last menstrual period means couple weeks before somebody's what's it called? You could this is, what is it? First day of a woman's last menstrual period. So if you got off your period the first week of June and you got pregnant the, I don't know, third week of June, then the gestational age starts at the woman's last menstrual period, which means it starts before you actually got pregnant. If I'm reading that correctly. Gestational sac means the structure comprised. Okay, we don't need to read definition. Well, this specific stuff. Physician means, yeah, we know what a physician is. Pregnancy means human female reproductive condition that begins with fertilization, occurs I want, let's see, determination of presence. For the purposes of determining, except providing section, oh, for fuck's sake. Prohibiting abortion, unborn child with detectable heartbeat. Yeah, here we go. Legally, they cannot offer service. They can attempt to charge. Thing is made to block up to 28-ish days. Physician does not violate the section if the physician performed a test of the fetal heartbeat as required by section Cool. We already know that part. I want to see the okay, where's the I'm assuming it doesn't actually say 6 weeks. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that's what the gestational age means. Because that's kind of how you get to like a 6 week is the shortest it could possibly be. Notwithstanding chapter 16, private practices and remedies of notwithstanding the law. God damn it. I hate legalese. It's so fucking hard to find anything. Any claim like okay, I don't want this. Fine. Give me something that, oh wait, what is this? Relating to abortion, including abortion after detection of unborn child's heartbeat, authorizing a private civil right of action. What the fuck? Texas abortion statute text. Every language, yeah, really. It's menstrual period is called amenorrhea. Interesting. Didn't know that. 28 days is 4 weeks. Okay, cool. Man, I don't know. I'm not a math magician. I was at best an English major. And even this is too fucking legalese for me. What is this? Let's see. 10,000 additional live births. Lovely. Research paper published. Additional live births. Texas legislature passed the bill September of 2021. Effectively ban abortion about 5 to 6 weeks after the woman's last menstrual cycle. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's not even like when the pregnancy happened. Now research from Johns Hopkins Blue Birth School estimated roughly 9,800 live births occurred through statistical modeling and looking back at previous live birth data from all 50 states. District of Columbia researchers found that there have been 287,289 live births in Texas that time period 2021, and in reality they observed at that time. Studies findings highlight how abortion bans have real implications of birthing people, thousands of whom may have had no choice but to continue an unwanted or unsafe pregnancy to term. Let's see. This data comes 1 year out the Supreme Court. Yeah. Texas is among these states. Okay. What time is it? Oh, okay. I got to kind of finish up here. I do. But it's plus minus depending on women, etc. So I figured it was easier to say 28-ish. Makes sense. Conversation on the women's rights doesn't matter if we can't argue on how to evaluate the value of the fetus. No, I thought we already had this conversation. Didn't we already have this conversation? Inherently valuable as a human, and we're performing murder every abortion. Well, technically, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Because murder to me is, because you have to understand also, murder is kind of a very specific kind of term, considering there's a pregnancy left by last period, because it's easier than asking when or how many times you had sex. Yeah, and even that's not even like really consistent. So the wishes of the woman doesn't matter, since the analysis happens after the analysis of the value of the fetus, and the evaluation of the fetus is the entire disagreement. The woman's choice doesn't matter. Oh, woman's choice does matter. She's the one who's actually setting the value, the actual value number on the fetus. I would say the family is the ones who set the value determiner. Okay, we're gonna finish this section. Technically, it's 11:12. I probably should go, because this is a bedroom and people do need to sleep. Murder is intent. Let's keep that in mind. Murder has a very specific definition.
For that to be, but there is a difference between an individual piece of sand and a pile of sand.
It's a false equivalency, Destiny.
It is. Hold on. This is basic argumentation.
Because the reality is, you are saying.
Well, actually, no. I actually kind of like that analogy, because the idea that like a piece of like sand on the beach is different from like a sandcastle those are two distinctly different things.
Exact solid time.
That's kind of a big deal.
It's not really that big of a deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
There's
You're
a line
making
between
laws.
there's a line between homicide
you could
and
literally
then it
just
being
say
totally
like,
okay.
hey, before
Wait,
20
Goofy,
weeks,
but that means
abortion is okay, and
every
it's not
time
a
we
cutoff
chop a
right
tree
there.
down, we're murdering.
That's a question
Should
for
somebody be
policymakers.
convicted of murder for
but
murdering
why do
a life?
Why does anyone get to
Why do a
decide
bunch of
whether or
men
not
get to
an
decide
innocent person lives or dies.
Because that's what policymakers do.
No, they don't have the right to kill an innocent person. If any policymaker tries to kill an innocent person,
about
that's
healthcare
murder.
and triage and who gets medical treatment first, or if you're making decisions about saving people
from.
Okay, hold on. Wait. Okay. Wait. Just be clear. I'm gonna start cutting people. Wait. I know, but I don't have a chance to answer any question, and you're like loading so many horribly like intuition pump question bags in front of me that I don't have time to answer all of the horrible questions in front of me. Okay. So like, wait. No, I'm gonna keep talking. We're gonna do one at a time. I will.
Well, no, I'm arguing that mothers, well, not mothers technically, it would be family members. I think the people involved, I would say families and like practitioners would be the people who are what's the word I'm looking for? Are calculating the value of a pregnancy. What I'm concerned with is the state. I don't think the state should be making that decision for people. That's my argument. Every individual person will have a different value calculation for their pregnancy. Everybody. How many people how many people's like mothers value their daughters' pregnancies more than their daughters' pregnancies? Because their daughters are getting fat and sweaty and don't like the process. But their mothers love it because they're getting a grandkid, right? Like the value here is not static. It's incredibly fluid.
Answer a question, but you can't keep stacking like dumb questions in front of me and they'll be like, oh, see, like you want to murder children, okay?
Is it okay? How long is this segment?
So let me address the very first thing, because you keep trying to draw like there's some like thing here that you've caught me on. The idea that I can't give you a concrete time between 20 to 24 weeks, okay? Yeah. I hate to be the guy that does this in a debate, but there's something called a continuum fallacy or a nirvana fallacy. The idea that just because I can't
like 3
point
minutes,
exactly at when something begins, that I have to say that all of it is the same, or I can't point to that thing existing at all. I can't tell you when individual pieces of sand are stacked up and eventually become a pile of sand. I can't give you the exact numbers of sand that I conceive for that to be, but there is a difference between an individual piece of sand and
whether I think that we're murdering trees doesn't track with the idea that I think people should be prosecuted under murder if they chop down a tree. Like I don't think that holds murder in the way that our legal system holds murder. I don't like when people chop down trees because I like trees for the most part, I guess.
Hold on.
But it's not the same thing as like I wouldn't convict somebody of murder, like murdering a person, as I would murdering a tree. Just because they're both life, they're not of the same value.
It's consciousness rights.
Yes.
You believe in not human rights.
To be clear, nobody here at this table.
You either consciousness rights.
Hold on. Why don't you defend?
Wait. You need to defend your position, and you're not doing that. You're kind of blowing smoke a little bit, to be honest.
Why don't you give the same rights to why don't you give the same rights to human corpses as you do to living humans?
Because they're dead.
To your be specific line, Goofy, you're not gonna get a concrete answer from me because it's not gonna be the same for everybody. For some people, it's the wife. For some people, it's the girlfriend. For some people, it's the boyfriend. For some people, it's the husband. For some people, it's the previous kid they had. For some people, it's the grandparents. For some people, it's their parents. For some people, it's their aunts, their uncles, their nieces, their nephews. Like everybody who's close to this, everybody who's in the family, most likely is going to have some value calculation of this. But it's not going to be like everybody has the same calculation. Each person is going to value more or less depending on their own personal, some people don't think their siblings should have kids. Like, and for that reason, they're like, I don't really care that much or whatever.
What does that mean when you say they're dead?
So they're already dead.
What does dead mean to you?
I mean, their body's no longer working in a coordinated fashion anymore. Their heart isn't pumping blood. Their brain is not.
If I put a person on a table,
I'm only saying that the family is going to be who is making a value calculation.
There is a difference between withholding extraordinary.
Just to be clear, I'm about to ask that same question after you, whatever you're about to say, because you're not answering my question.
Because it's a bit of obfuscation the direction you're going here, because there's a difference between
how early
withholding extraordinary medical care,
pretty much up until
and withholding ordinary medical care. So if I
up until 20 to 26 weeks, I believe that's the medical consensus. I don't 100% know, but I do know it's somewhere in the realm of 20 to 26 weeks, determined by a doctor depending on gestational I guess whatever a practitioner, whoever you're going to. To me it's not the government should set a line, but I do think if we're going to set a line, which is going to be arbitrary anyway, it's probably anywhere between 20 to 26. And I like having an opaque, like, cutoff, basically, to allow for what's the word? I've said it a couple times now. The premature, like premature births, kids who like develop like quicker for whatever reason, or even fetuses that that gestate at a slower rate. Like I want that like opaque period to be like somebody goes in, their doctor, they go in at maybe 9 weeks. Okay, they find out they're pregnant. Can they get an abortion? Yes. They go in at 16 weeks. Can they get an abortion still? Yes, if they still want to. They go to 20, and that's when, yes, they can, but that's when we have a little bit more information. And if a doctor says, actually, your pregnancy is is far along at this certain point, and we've reached kind of a gestational point that isn't, maybe you're like a couple days or maybe a week ahead of where we thought you'd be, maybe because, you had sex, 2 weeks in a row, and we thought it was this week, and it was actually that other week that you initially got pregnant. So you're actually up a week or whatever. But I want something that's a little more like vague around the cutoff period, because like a hard cutoff isn't suitable for humans that don't have hard cutoffs for these things. It's medical care is a bit needs to be malleable, I think, and the laws should reflect that malleability. And I also think it should be up to families and doctors to kind of pick where they kind of stand in that region. After 26 weeks, generally on average, we don't see like crazy variances in gestation. So I think at that point there'd be a cutoff. There is a cutoff. I just don't think it's a hard line. I don't think there's a hard line for cutoffs that the government should be setting. Hopefully that answers your question. Said that we have to have a legal line. So how do we legally put down who gets to choose value if it keeps changing? Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's going to keep changing because people keep changing their mind. That's just kind of, it's going to change because people change their mind. And I think we should allow people the space to change their mind and do whatever, what's the word I'm looking for? And do whatever kind of fits them most. If it's an economic thing, then, the economics will influence that. If it's a family planning thing, the family planning will do that. But I think people are capable of making that decision for themselves. I don't think we need the government stepping in any kind of like hard way to say you cannot have an abortion. And certainly like a 6-week abortion is ridiculous. Okay, so I realize it's past 11, so I actually have to skedaddle. So yeah, maybe this is like a 4-hour debate, so maybe I'll kind of like pop into this every once in a while when I want something, when I have time to fill. But yeah, either way, I gotta run because people gotta sleep, and probably gonna be editing for a good couple of hours tonight. So yeah, let's see. If it's a standard of consciousness, the formation of the brain matter is the most important thing. The signals of the brain. 12 without 1 before 24 weeks. A random plethora of people get to decide the value of human life. 2, the government now gets to decide the value of human life. Does that sum it up? Before 24 weeks? I believe I said 20 to 26, and I also didn't draw a hard line. I really care about the hard line part, because I want doctors and patients to have a lot of freedom to tailor their care to their needs. Okay, I can't keep doing this. I'm fine answering questions. I really am. I'd probably keep talking for a while, but I must go. Okay. I think that's it for tonight. Yeah. I don't think I have any notes for Monday. Either way, I appreciate everybody hanging out and chatting and making their points. Everyone here seemed rather fair, and I appreciate actual arguments and people wanting, not just coming in here and calling me a shit lib. I always appreciate that. But if you enjoyed any of what you watched, and I know you're gonna hate this part. If you enjoyed any of what you watched, if you liked hanging out in the chat like Goofy over here, then or if you're just lurking, if you're like a chatter, maybe you're watching on YouTube. I don't know what you're doing. You're doing whatever you're doing. You should hit the follow button because I do this 3 times a week. Monday, on Tuesday, on Thursday, like today, for about 3 hours. Sometimes play horror games, but sometimes it just kind of falls to the wayside because there's other topics to talk about, and we get into debating like we did tonight. Either way, everyone have a lovely night. I will see any of you who are back on Monday, and for those who aren't, I'll know who you are. But until then, you all have a lovely night. I'm going to run before my girlfriend kicks my ass. So, goodbye.